of Sigmar story phase. Grab your hammer so we can clear a path through the chaos and forge our own narratives in the Age of Sigmar. Your allies through the redirection portal this episode are...
Hey, I'm Phil, and today I'm going to be taking you to a dream world of monsters.
Oh, hey, it's Paven. I'm back. I don't have a pun. I'm so sorry. Well, I'll think of one later and we'll splice it in.
Put it in post. And I'm Aaron, and if I'm a bad Renee Zellweger concert, then you could call me the end of Empire Records. In this episode, we cover the lore of Broken Realms Kragnos. No, seriously, this time, did you guys hear that? The earth-shaking sound of Kragnos' hooves are heading this way, and he's got a bone to pick with anyone who's standing on the opposite side of any wall from him. You don't need a glimmering from Excelsis to know it's best to get out of his way. So let's see if anyone makes it out in time. Hey, how you guys doing tonight?
Feeling pretty good. We wrapped up Broken Realms. We did it. We made it to the end.
Wait. Let's not declare victory so soon.
We'll see who survives.
I mean, I'm not no spoilers, but we made it to the end. Looking forward to a whole new world in AOS 3.
Full of earthquakes, man. I can't talk. Full of earthquakes.
Where are Earth?
Yeah, but before we start talking about this here Broken Realm stories, I want to hear what you guys have been up to in the hobby. Let's take those listeners into our homes, into our lives, and give them a little slice. Paven, what have you been doing in the hobby recently?
Oh boy, just Curse City all the time. That is a big bucket of minis, and I am battling my way through it. It's so good. It's such a good set, and I don't want to complain about it, but it's just such a backlog to get through before I allow myself to do anything else. I'm about 45 of 60 miniatures painted, so I feel pretty proud of that. But
oof, man,
that is pretty good.
Yeah, I almost have everything painted to be able to play my first game with it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Yeah, all the tier 0 hostiles and 4 heroes is my kind of initial goal. But that's 83% of the box is just that number. So, but I'm almost there.
Right on.
Cool.
I expect your phone call any day now.
Looking forward to playing with some beautifully painted models.
Phil, what you been doing?
Yeah, I've been busy. Been painting some Seraphon. Been getting going on. So the Mortal Realms received a Dominion box. And we have decided we're going to do yet another painting competition. The Blood Knights seem to go pretty well, so I've also been building some Stormcast to get ready for that. And kicked off our Underworlds League for some in-person gaming again at our local Warhammer store. So getting that rolling as well. And Paven was there, but not for Underworlds.
No, well then, and it hardly even counts. And what have I been up to? Honestly, just still doing more Slanesh assembly, which sounds like that's a bad move with the new points that have come out. Everybody's down on the Slanesh. But I finally finished the Hellflare, whatever it's called, with all the wheels. And so now I'm just doing an even less exciting series of models, which are the Hellstriders, right? The mortal folks, the old mortals.
Yeah, that ride on the things.
If you thought doing a bunch of bladed wheels was tedious and monotonous, try doing a whole bunch of whips where if you look at them too hard, or if you even if you whisper the word whip, they snap in half. And so that's where my hobby frustration is coming lately. But furthermore, another thing that I've been working on, which is kind of spur of the moment and only half planned, which will become evident very soon, is that speaking of Dominion boxes, Phil, we on the Mortal Realms are actually going to are giving a Dominion box away. We're sharing Dominion with the townspeople. And so we're running a giveaway currently. And I did not plan. I should have taken better notes. This is all off the cuff. I just got to remember all the details about it. So Dominion box given away. It's a contest that we're running for only folks in the US and Canada, because it's a small scope. It's easy to ship to these places. And to enter, there's a link that I'll put in the show notes. You can get a bunch of different entries by doing a bunch of different social related things, which is to say you can follow us on Twitter or retweet one of these tweets, or head to our Facebook page, or go join our Discord server, which these are all things you should have already done. And if you have, you get entries for each one of these things into this giveaway. It's going to run for a few weeks. I just looked up the date, but I forget when it's going to end. July Sunday, so the 11th. And we will pick one winner to give this sweet A box away. So look for the link in the show notes to enter yourself. Many will enter, few will win. No purchase is necessary, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know what the rules are. I hope no one sues me. So that has been a fun little project that I did a little spur of the moment, as you can tell. But that's about what I've been working on. You guys have any other things you want to talk about before we get to it?
No, I don't think so. I think we're ready to stampede our way through this book.
All right. Well, forever hold your peace. Paul's not here to do the story phase, so I'm going to have to say it. I'm going to do my best Paul voice. The story phase. Now, if that was an Eric voice, is what that was.
It was definitely Eric.
Yeah. In the story phase, we delve into the stories, characters, creatures, and environments of the 9 realms. You guys remember Eric? Whatever happened to that guy? So let's do this here story phase. I think what we've been doing with the Broken Realms episodes is we've been trying to set the stage and give folks a little bit of a where are we now? What's happened recently? Important events that have occurred that are going to inform the plot of this here story. Do you guys have any things that come to mind that you think the listeners ought to know ahead of time before we lead into this Broken Realms tale?
Well, I think that Broken Realms Morathi is probably the most important to be up on for this book, because we definitely see Morathi come in this story and definitely flouting that new god power, as you do. And
I would too.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't? And the newborn, they are also, they're going to make an appearance here. So if you're not aware of them and what transpired to bring about their birth, you should probably head on back and listen to the episode about Morathi.
Use that little back button of yours and skip a few episodes back. Paven, you got any thoughts on things to catch folks up on?
Yeah, I don't know when we want to do this, but we usually have a long conversation about when does this book take place.
Oh, yeah, we can do it.
It's a Mortal Realms tradition, is when are we? But I think this is solidly after all the other books.
Yep.
Yeah.
All 3. I don't think... I don't know, who are we talking to when we're trying to describe what is going on in these books? If you know nothing, just hold on and get ready for a wild ride, because there's nothing we can tell you now that's going to give you enough context. But yeah, quickly catching people up. Yeah, Morathi's a new god, and Teclis killed Nagash.
Well, let's be very clear here.
Yeah.
He probably is not dead. Well,
he was already dead.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, he's always dead. I get, but how do you kill that which is already dead?
Yeah, no, I can kill that which has no life.
Sure.
Yeah.
Either way.
I mean,
thoroughly broken.
Yeah, and Nagash is sorry for speaking so loosely with the truth of the canon. Nagash has already appeared in short stories since his death. But he's he's old, crazy Nagash again from the beginning of Age of Sigmar, which is, I think, best version of Nagash.
Oh, Nagash.
It's Nagash just up to antics, and then all of the Mortarks just pinching their eyes while they try to rule the Empire. But boy, did I get off topic. Yeah.
I think that's good. I mean, I guess, funny enough, I don't know. So obviously Be'lakor was the book just before this, but I think maybe it's the least impactful.
I was just trying
of
to
all
think
the
if I could draw a single connection from that book to this book, and with the exception of like the very obvious thing at the end, I couldn't really come up with one. I think at one point
they like in everything else, they foreshadow the siege of Excelsis in that book as well. When Gardas talks to Croak, he like has a vision of this
Right.
happening.
I mean, it was some pretty heavy-handed foreshadowing, to be sure.
I mean, we've been foreshadowing Excelsis for, I don't know, 2 editions now.
Yeah, a very long time. Man, I wish I would have had the forethought to like go back and try and find the first instance of like where they'd reference like Gordrak heading towards Excelsis, because it was a ways back.
Maybe Aaron, I don't know if you want to like this idea or we should cut this from the podcast, but maybe it's a Patreon goal that we start doing like show research.
Get to a certain level, and then I promise I'll start looking.
So we're gonna really start trying.
Get an intern in here.
I bet you Will would do it.
But yeah, and I think also beyond the foreshadowing with Gardas, I think also just generally the Hollowed Knights stuff, like just a lot of the stuff that sort of happened around them and sort of their dealing with Stormcast stuff and sort of letting people know about like, hey, we're sort of on the inside track here because we talked to Croak. Probably it applies a bit, but
yeah, at some point in this book, I think someone says the effect of, we got to get a hold of Gardas because we know that he had talked to Croak, which then what happened in Bellicor. So
yeah,
that makes sense. All right, but basically, I think the other Broken Realms books are the things you would need to read if you want to be fully caught up to this here story.
I guess if you really want to be caught up, you've got to go back and read Wrath of the Everchosen too. But
sure. Well,
and if you really want to, the old world is canon, so you got to read all the old stuff too.
Yeah,
there's some questions later about the old world that I am ill-equipped to answer. I'm not looking forward to those, but we will get there when we get there. All right, so everybody's experts on the mortal realms up until this point. They know as much as we know. Let's start at the beginning. Oh, actually. The reason it's worth noting, yeah, well, it is a good place to start. It's worth again bringing back up that the Nagash has been laid low because of that. If death is whatever the opposite of ascendant is, descendant.
That doesn't sound right.
That doesn't sound right, but I don't know enough about her to refute it.
I think it's unscendant. Yeah,
unscendant. That sounds dead sendant. What if that's on the downswing? Then what's on the upswing? Must be life. Hey, let's jump right into the beginning, which is it's a section called "The Right of Life," all about Alariel, the Everqueen, kicking some beastmen butt, which is what they're here for. Does anybody want to talk about this?
So yeah, curtain up. I guess Aaron mentions the end of Broken Realms tech list. So 2 books ago, Nagash is laid low. So Alariel, the Everqueen, goddess of the realm of life. We had a lot of cryptic conversations with Teclis in that book about what will happen when if you force kind of the cycle to turn. I think she has a philosophy that's very cyclical. Okay, so but it's turning now, and she's also kind of forcing things. And so where curtain goes up, all of the events that have happened, chaos is a little bit on the back foot. The energies of death are receding. The Everqueen makes her move and tries to retake this place. And right now it's overrun by beastmen. And they're just gross and they're ruining it. And they have a magical artifact, which is called the Dirge Horn, which is a really cool instrument that sings the song to end the empires. And they apparently had been broken by the Hollowed Knights at some point. And the Nurgle had put it back together and then filled it with pus to make it rebuild it grossly. And at the same time, they're fighting this battle. So this big Sylvaneth classic Warhammer, Sylvaneth versus Beastmen battle. And they're also like this musical battle happening at the same time where the Everqueen and the Sylvaneth are like singing a song, this kind of life song that is driving the Beastmen into a rage. And the Beastmen are kind of playing their Dirge Horn, this horrible artifact, to kind of counter that in a sonic type of way. And it's
Battle of the Bands is what it is.
Yeah, it's a real battle of the bands. And So there's a big fight. They're cutting each other to pieces, and every Sylvaneth that dies is kind of like going towards this musical ritual that the Everqueen is enacting. And slowly but surely, this tree that had been knocked over and despoiled, hundreds of years ago during the opening salvos of the Age of Sigmar, it's called the Oak of Ages Past.
I like how you just called it some tree, like the most important tree of all trees.
Yeah,
it's just some tree.
And it was actually a tree that was when the world exploded in the old. This was a tree that used to be at the center of the Wood Elf realm in the world that was. And when the world exploded, this hunk of wood just kind of flew through space until it, I guess, landed in Ghyran. I don't know if that's exactly what happened, but that's how I pictured it.
No, that's exactly right. The Oak of Ages, a surviving remnant of the world that was, drifted through the etheric void for eons until it came to Ghyran.
Yeah, so it was a big piece of wood.
Literally driftwood. Yeah.
And it lands there. And they loved it, but then it got ruined again by Nurgle and Chaos. But slowly, okay, so fast forward to the present day. Slowly, they're singing this song. Sylvaneth are dying. Their blood and souls are getting sucked up by the roots of this ancient tree. And it starts to, right itself in a kind of weird way. And the Everqueen is like, oh my God, it's working. And but like, of course it's working. She's like a god, And so
she's probably like, oh my me, it's working.
Yeah. I'm doing it. And so the tree stands back up. They kill all the beastmen. They smash the horn. And like when the tree stands up, like kind of new Sylvaneth spring up. And that's where we get the, what are they called? The pipe guys?
The pipe guys.
The Warsong Revenants.
There it
Thank
is.
you. The Warsong Revenants, who are like new baby Sylvaneth, but they seem very wise. And they spring forth out of the realm to spread the spirit song. And like as part of this ritual, the Everqueen like sends out a wave of life. So all over the realms, like it like kind of like how there's a necroquake, there's kind of like a life tsunami that similarly affects things. I don't think it's as drastic and as like disruptive as the necroquake was, but like there is like magical stuff happening everywhere. Like in Akshi, like fire becomes sentient. In I don't have another good example that I remember, but in Gur, like Gur is already like really agitated and animalistic and sentient. So like things really start to get wild over there. And that's kind of where the stage is set and kind of what kicks everything into motion from here.
Another good example is eyes opened amidst Olgu's mists, sinister and cruel. So apparently, I don't know if the mists themselves are sentient or what have you, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, the Song of Life is literally waking the realms, which, if you thought they were dangerous before, just wait.
And when you say that we don't know if it was maybe as drastic as the necroquake, we might not be in a position to know if it was as drastic as the necroquake. Like it just sort of happened, and maybe it'll take a hot second for us to really know the ramifications. And so, yeah, I'm not hopeful, but there's a chance that like maybe it will be as monumental as the necroquake was.
I think that's a really good point. We don't know the full ramifications. It certainly has some big effects in this book, but I don't know if this Age of Sigmar is going to be defined by the Lithoquake the same way that the last was defined by the necroquake. There's one more thing I want to talk about, and I don't know if you guys had this in the notes, was after the ritual's over and the beastmen are purged and kind of a full forest blooms in this this magical place through the miracles of the Everqueen. She mutters two words from long ago, which are Athaloran. But Athaloran is the ancient homeland of the Wood Elves, fan favorite Wood Elves. I know me and Aaron are also big Wood Elf fans from back in the day. And so what does that mean? Like we have the Oak of Ages, we got Athaloran, we have the Everqueen. Does that mean
Kurnothi incoming?
Does that mean
what? You heard it here first, folks.
I sure do hope so. I'm sure I've been recorded saying that I wish they would stop bringing so much stuff from the old world and instead work on just new things. That only applied to stuff that I wasn't interested in. But as soon as they start bringing stuff from the old world that I'm into, then I'm like all for it, and I'm super gung ho about it. So all Athaloran all the time, please.
Honestly, Satyr, Dryad, and Centaur elves, I'd be hard pressed to not find that appealing. So if they want to do that, I mean, people are probably going to throw money at them.
Yeah. So unanimous on this here podcast, everybody. We're all for it.
But of course, we're probably not right.
Those two Kurnothi releases are the only Kurnothi that we'll ever see. Cool. I think that sums it up.
So much for the prologue.
Hey, no, it's good. I mean, that is the prologue. That's how the book starts.
Now we actually get into the book proper. Part 1, Part Uno. And it starts, actually much of the book, not all of it, I guess, but much of it takes place in Excelsis. I think we've mentioned it, we've pointed to it. I've missed it. So, the section, this part 1 starts with a fun map. However, I think it's a map of Gur that we've seen before. It's one of the cool ones. It's got like the footprints, like the guardians marching across. But we're honing in. We're most interested in sort of the coast of Tusk's region, which is where Excelsis is.
Yeah.
And Excelsis is not in a good way. They are on what some might say is the brink of destruction. And I would say that because that's the name of the section.
Right.
And so it gives us a little bit of background on what's happened relatively recently in Excelsis. And it's basically sums up the plot of a novella that came out years and years ago called City of Secrets, written by Nick Horth. And so it talks about how it's a city that's sort of built up around the Spear of Malice, which is the part of the old world where they could chip off little chips of it, and they use those as like ways to foster like predictions and prophecies and stuff like that. So that's kind of what this city's spiel is. But because of that, since it's a place of prophecy and knowledge and secrets and stuff like that, Tzeentch had gotten his little claws into it, and some of his followers were started an insurrection there. So this actually was a book that came out when the first Disciples of Tzeentch book came out. So I want to say 2017, maybe even 2016. I'm not sure, but it's one of the actually first Mortal Realms episodes I ever did.
It was a while ago.
Yeah, so it's pretty neat, and it's, at least from my perspective, noteworthy in that it's one of the few times that one of these studio books has ever referenced the plot of a novel, like retroactively after the fact. Man, I wish Paul was here because I'm sure he'd have a lot to say about it, but it's rare that the studio and Black Library books ever intersect unless like they intentionally are intersecting. Like it's like the Dominion book is going to come out and it's probably going to, mirror very closely as to what's going on in Dominion. But the fact that this is a studio book that's actually calling to mind this old Black Library story it almost never happens. And so that's super interesting. To quote Paul, you guys can be the judge of that. And second of all, like, I wonder if this is a sign that maybe they'll start doing that more often. Now, guys, I'm just blabbering on here, but it's worth noting that Nick Horth, if I understand correctly, is like a studio writer as well. And he's the one who's wrote the novel. So maybe that's why, like, he's got a special end, and so that they're able to reference the plots of his stories.
Makes sense.
Or maybe these characters are just so ingrained in the story of Excelsis, like it's hard to talk about it without including that story. I don't know. I'd be curious to know what's going through their heads as to why they chose this as the time where they're going to start to pluck details from a novel or a novella. I think it was shorter. But it's a very cool situation to find ourselves in. I hope they do it more often.
Well, you ring them up, and you get an interview, and you get your answers.
Sure. Guys, I can barely talk to you people who I know relatively well. I definitely can't talk to strangers. One final thought, and this will be me eating crow a little bit, but there's been plenty of times where some of my co-hosts or other people have posited, oh, what if this new thing that's coming is going to be this obscure character from these old novels? And I always say, well, no, the studio books are never pull from novel. Like that never happens. It's never going to happen. Now, the fact that it has means that, I have to reevaluate all my predictions that have occurred previously.
Your whole life.
Yeah, and also my whole life, from birth till now.
So so they just do it. It's just a one page we're really talking about here, where they recap it. But you're talking about, like, they make an explicit reference to Callus and Toll.
Yep.
Like, they say their names on these pages.
Yep.
Is that like?
Yeah.
And so, like they mentioned, Vermeer, I think is the bad guy's name, and so he's the one who led the insurrection in that City of Secrets book. And then jumping ahead a little bit, they bring up Ulrika Zenth, who is also a character from this series. So she's the Scourge privateer that comes into play a little later as well.
Yeah.
So a couple name drops in this here one.
It does make me wonder, since there's been so much stuff through the lore over many years about Excelsis, I wonder how long ago they like built out the skeleton of the plot line and they were saying like, here's the end point. We need to get there. Like it just feels like it can't be a coincidence that they had all these different plot lines that all lead to Excelsis, for it to just be like, oh, hey, I guess we've mentioned this place like 10 plus times. Maybe we should actually like do stuff there for the next edition.
I think it's a little bit of both. My understanding of the way you write settings like this is that you leave a lot of like open doors for yourself and a lot of like breadcrumbs that if the IP or the writer wants to expand in that direction, they totally can, and there's always room to grow. But it's, there's in Warhammer and a lot of other kind of settings, there's always like these dangling threads that don't get resolved from like maybe never.
That's true. Resolved. Very true.
But yeah, what are we talking about here? This is Kragnos. What's happening in Excelsis?
Hey, this is important stuff for understanding Excelsis.
One other thing, and this isn't a very concrete point, maybe in retrospect we'll delete it, in that I don't know how long ago, but it was years ago. I was talking about like, I wish I knew how far back the first thread of Excelsis getting destroyed. If I understand correctly, in some interview or something, in some panel that they were doing, one of the studio writers had mentioned, something Excelsis. Oh yeah, but Excelsis is destroyed, isn't it? And this was many years ago.
Way before any knowledge of Excelsis being destroyed.
It was worse than that. He said, "Is like, oh, wait, did that not happen yet?" Is what he ended up saying.
Yeah, made it very intentional that like, oops, there's a thing I just let out that I wasn't supposed to say, which is funny.
Yeah, I love it.
Good recovery there. Nailed it.
Back to the city of Excelsis. So they've had some historical trouble with Tzeentch, right? And so there was a cult. Right. It rose up. It did a lot of destruction. They did some damage. And so it was eventually put down by the aid of Callus and Toll and the city's defenders and so on and so forth. And after the Tzeentch forces were routed, that section of where they were fostering the Tzeentchian cult was basically quarantined, isolated, and just like mercilessly destroyed by the Knights Excelsior. Yeah, the storm host Knights Excelsior, led by another character that has come up in multiple places, is this White Reaper. And so it's the Lord Veritant there. And he is a no-nonsense, chaos-hating Stormcast. And so with him at the head, they really put a lot of the city to the sword, very brutally, and some might say over the top. And that also is sort of a lasting legacy here in Excelsis, is that wound is still sort of fresh. The damage that Tzeentch did, but then again, the damage that the Stormcast did in response to what was going on with the Tzeentch cult.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I think that purge, correct me if I'm wrong, breaks one of the chains of Slaanesh.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah.
There was a couple of purges across the cities of Sigmar, and this was one of them. I think there was a Vindicarum one at some point too. But it was the fact that like a city's defenders were killing innocent people, and so like since that's an anathema or something,
it's excess.
It snapped one of Tzeentch's changes. Slaanesh's chains. I looked that up earlier today.
Yeah.
So a lot of context in this here town.
And one cool thing I think you skipped over pretty quickly, but I want to talk about, is that they didn't like purge the corrupted corridors or neighborhoods in Excelsis. They just quarantined them. Yeah. So they just boarded them up, and there's these weird, twisted, corrupted places within the borders of Excelsis. And they kind of just like, well, you just don't go there. That's the bad neighborhood. Yeah. And they just kind of go about their business. I think I guess that gives the cool texture to that city.
I think they even make mention in this book that it's literally walled in. Like they built like city walls inside the city to block this area off because it's full of wild magic and endless spells that are destroying everything, and they don't want any of that nasty Zinch-ness getting out.
So nasty. Freak nasty.
Freaky nasty. And that kind of leads us into the next section with the Tumult Arcana. Magic going crazy. And so in response to the crazy magic, we're introduced to a group of Sigmarite devout who go by the name the Nullstone Brotherhood. And they've basically taken it upon themselves to take up the same mantle as the Knights Excelsior, to just say, magic obviously leads to Zinch, so therefore all magic needs to be purged. And they are led by a priest by the name of Odo Mulgan, who is going to be featured throughout here for a little while. And he leads these significant, I don't know, what would you call them?
Witch hunts?
Yeah, witch hunts.
Yeah, I mean, literally, right? So they're, hunting out anyone who uses magic and persecuting them. And I'm trying to remember.
On the street. It's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty awful. And they, I'm trying to remember though, like, are they like openingly murdering people in the streets, or are they just?
You're right. They kind of disappear, folks. And they really start to target the elven population for elves' known affinity to magic.
Yep.
And so, there starts to become some racial tensions in the city as elves start to disappear, or elves start to have vengeance and retribution against these human folks.
Yeah, I mean, the Nullstone Brotherhood is so prolific in their sort of stating how elves all use magic and are therefore evil, that they turn basically the entire city against the elven population in the city, to the point that elves start to leave Excelsis. I might be jumping ahead a little bit there.
No, but I think we're heading that direction. Like it's an escalation, right? They start with your street corner prophets and like soothsayers, and then you start going after wizards. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, all wizards or all elves are basically wizards, so we're going to go after those elves. We're going to maybe chase them out of town. They don't want to leave, so now I'm going to start killing them in town. But then of course the elves aren't helpless, right? Like. Mm-hmm. Think of the city with the population of elves here. They're going to fight back, and so like then. The Scourge privateers are fairly underhanded and like sneaking. So they're doing secret like assassinations in the streets as well. So it's very much a guerrilla, kind of like a gang warfare type situation. But it just happens to be that the elves are, I think, outnumbered is maybe what their weakness is. And they decided to take their ball and go home, wherever that is.
Especially there's some really bad, really tough dude elves in this Scourge privateers have a big presence. And so those are the elven pirates and privateers that hunt monsters and stuff. And it says here, like, people that try to mess with those elves, like while they're on shore leave, like often those humans will end up like flayed and like on the city walls as warnings to, don't mess with the sailors. But and that just escalates tensions worse.
Yeah.
And like Aaron said, like this is like a really important strategic asset the city has, which is this huge pirate privateer force. And they just sail away. They're just like, it's not worth it. And they leave.
Yeah, no, they were done with all the crap they were having to deal with. They're just sailing out of town.
Sure. Things end up getting so bad, right, that like the Grand Conclave, which I think every city of Sigmar has, is this big conclave, has to step in, and so they like chide. What's his the Odo Mulgan? Yeah, Odo Mulgan. They're like, hey man, cut this out, and he said, oh sure, my bad. Okay, yeah, well, of course. And then all they do is just move their activities a little underground, and it's like they get more sneaky about it. Maybe they're not killing people on the street corners, but like this is where they really start like kidnapping like the elves. So it's less. Yeah. Slitting throats and more like disappearing them, never to be seen again.
So in this section, they make reference to the fact that they believe that mirrors were deemed unnatural gateways to the demonic and were confiscated en masse. And so we know that they're collecting mirrors. We know that they're like secreting away elves and like you said, once their actions were deemed like too extreme, they did start to carry out all these actions within the walled off portions of the city. So they're in there. They've got all their mirrors. I don't know that we find out.
Maybe I'm jumping ahead.
I think we're jumping ahead.
We also have two characters that we haven't talked about that are investigating this mystery.
That's
we're not talking about.
That's
them.
Quite a bit later, but yes, there are two important characters who are investigating what's going on. Do we want to just mention them now? Since
they are introduced. They're named in this section. It's just maybe that we don't talk about their investigation as much, right? But
sure, yep.
Alongside with this rising tension in the city, Excelsis is known for like the prophecies that you can sort of glean from the glimmerings from the spirit malice, and there starts to be sort of a unifying, consistent like prophetic vision that a lot of folks, well, maybe not completely unifying, but people are getting a lot of doom and gloom out of their prophecies here in town, talking about how like the city is on the brink of destruction, enemies within and without, and what's going to happen. And so because of these prophecies, and the fact that it's an innately like magical city, there is a presence of the Order of Azir, and specifically, as far as we're concerned, there are two witch hunters here who, if I understand correctly, spend a lot of their time hunting endless spells, but they're also aware of sort of the growing unrest here in the city. And it's a father and daughter, a duo, the Vendensts, Doralia and I didn't write it down. Galen, I think, is the dad.
That sounds right.
Yeah, and so for one reason or another, they decide that, you know what, we got to get to the truth of what's occurring here. It's a rising dread here in this city. Who can we turn to? Because we're not getting sort of consistent answers from the populace. Who can we turn to like glean more information about the rising problems here in this town? I know. Let's get a hold of the local Seraphon temple and see what they have to say. And maybe let's cut through the BS and maybe get some real answers here. And so that is what they do. They head off to the temple's there somewhere, and the Vendens head that direction. Doralia heads up the temple, the ziggurat stairs, but her dad is attacked, quote unquote, by a bout of breathlessness, and he's not able to follow her in, and she heads into the ziggurat. I don't want to say never to be seen again, but for a stretch, and we sort of just leave her there as we hop scenes a little bit later.
Mm-hmm. When in doubt, turn to the Seraphon.
Well, and then still be in doubt after you turn into this, you're not going to learn.
Well, that's probably true because they don't really talk.
And so they get maybe a more clear vision or more clear answers. And I think I maybe had jumped ahead a little bit, but they speak to a skink priest who basically tells them or shows her, or I forget exactly how it is, through vision or through cryptic answers, tells her that the city is caught between enemies within and without. And the city's in grave danger, and they need to pull together, get their act together if they hope to survive. And Doralia takes this information and decides, all right, well, I've got maybe a more clear direction, or clearer answers from the Seraphon, but what should we do? Like what can we do with this information? And so if you live in a city that has a strong Stormcast contingent, maybe your next stop is to check with them. And so she and her father link up with that White Reaper that we were kind of talking about before. The very intense, some might say fanatical, but also like stern and dour Lord Veritan of the Knights Excelsior. And so they try and convince them, I guess, of the threats that the city is under. And so he's already like always consistently got an eye out for any sort of enemies or any sort of danger to the city. He's always worried about the orcs on the outside and the forces of chaos that are always got their greedy little eyes on Excelsis because of how important the city is. But the fact that there's this cult that's again growing on the inside. He's a little bit blind to, and also he doesn't necessarily know the external destruction threats that are amassing outside, and so he's caught a little unaware with, or maybe he's a little overwhelmed with all the potential problems that the city is facing. And then we kind of skipped over this thread, but it turns out the Slaneshi cult that has been growing. Well, I guess we don't know it's a Slaneshi cult, but the Nullstone Brotherhood has been doing a lot of their actions under the pretense that he's signed off on it, like that they are in league with the White Reaper, and that they have shared goals. And so when the witch hunters tell the White Reaper that, these folks have been doing a lot of this stuff in your name, he goes, whoa. I've never even talked to this guy. I mean, I don't know the first thing about this dude. And so it really becomes clear that things have kind of gotten a little out of his hands. And he really needs to refocus up on the issues that are, plaguing the city currently right now.
Can I just say, this is a pretty good cover for the Nullstone Brotherhood. And he's like, hey, we're purging these people like the White Reaper said we should. And everybody's like, yeah, that tracks.
Yeah. we totally believe that.
The White Reaper purged my brother just the other day. I get that.
I believe it. I think it's not super important to the story, but I do think that it's interesting for character building that this is also a sequence where we see a more human side to a Stormcast, even one as intense as this guy who just goes by the White Reaper. Like he has no other name that we are aware of.
He does have a name later in the book, but I am going to make it a point to never use it because the White Reaper is very cooler.
Always the White Reaper. But it talks about how his face is very weather worn, and that he sits with his shoulders slumped and is just obviously and visibly just tired from having to always deal with all these problems, that his city is always under threat.
It's actually a good point. And maybe one of the highlights of the book for me is that they don't normally go this direction with these characters. And you think, for a guy who reads a lot of AOS lore, and this name comes up not quite a bit, but every once in a while, I thought I knew this guy. And I think they made it a point to call out the fact that, no, you don't necessarily know everything. He's got a couple other facets than hates chaos, likes killing innocent people. There's more to him than that. And it definitely made me, I was under the impression that you weren't supposed to like him before. And it made me like him a little bit more now to know that this stuff really weighs on him and it's not easy. And he's just doing what he thinks he has to, which is different. I mean, that's not always the case for Stormcast or what could be a one-dimensional character normally. So
Games Workshop has gotten a lot better at writing Stormcast. I think the earlier Age of Sigmar fiction struggled with some one-dimensionality, two-dimensionality of the Stormcast, and I think they've figured out how to make them a lot more nuanced and play with our expectations a bit, and kind of understand the tragedy better of what being a Stormcast is like. And being exhausted, being an exhausted dad in charge of a city feels very Stormcast to me. Just oh God, what is it this time? It's that now, gets his big head chopping axe and thuds out the door.
And then you kill a bunch of innocent people, and just like Father did. I get that.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta make an omelet somehow, right?
How do you get the rest of the kids to behave? I don't know
why I'm on this guy's side. No, this guy's terrible. But I agree. I felt like his characterization was a surprise.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of surprises, what surprise jumps out? That jumps out is maybe not the term for it.
No, literally, they jump out.
So right in the middle in the middle of this revolution, and a classic movie move, right? Where some twist has been revealed, and you're like, oh man, what are we going to do with this info? Oh God, no! The sirens are on, or the baddies are here. And who expected this Skaven? Not me, except for the fact that they were one of the few armies left that hasn't been touched in the Broken Realm. So I figured the Skaven were coming eventually.
Except they've been in every single book.
Yeah, actually, that's true.
They just never had any significant rules or anything like that.
They never got a battalion yet.
Yeah, that's more what I meant. But they come streaming out of the gutters and the manhole covers. I don't know. Do cities have manhole covers in Age of Sigmar?
I think they described that, yes, they're coming out of the sewers. And
Probably called sig hole covers.
Sigholes. There you
yeah,
go.
makes sense.
Sure.
And that there
Duarden
were
hole covers.
gnaw holes inside the sewers.
Yeah.
And so they're just spilling out by the thousands.
Yep. As they do. So they strike the city, overwhelming force. Nobody's prepared for it. It's a force that's led by a warlock bombardier named Radachak. And he's all about like flames and fires and explosions, which makes sense. He becomes a bombardier, and that adds up. It's a very, if I remember correctly, it's a lot of like scryer like type Skaven, right? Specifically, I think you got a lot of
very
storm,
much so.
What are they called? The big guys?
Storm vermin.
The storm vermin are the elite.
The little guys, storm fiends.
Storm fiends, yep. And so on and so forth. A lot of engines of destruction. They catch the city unaware, and they do incredible damage very quickly to the city, which is then scrambling to sort of respond to this threat, which is, it wasn't even on the list of things I was naming before. No one thought this was coming. And I've been holding off bringing up this reveal, but it happens pretty quickly that we learn that this isn't a random Skaven attack, but rather the Radachak has been bribed or coerced or tricked or what have you into attacking this city at the predetermined time for reasons that I don't think we know at this point. But the point is that someone's pulling his strings, so to speak, and if he can just burn some part of the city down, he'll be rewarded. But honestly, as far as this guy's concerned, just the act of burning the city is enough for him. And if he burns himself up with it, then so be it.
And I think so. This is basically in one of these little subtexts, and it's actually pretty interesting. And they talk about how this voice in some warp fire that he is dealing with talks to him and basically tells him, like, sort of eggs him on to be even more of a pyromaniac than he already was. And I don't remember exactly how it comes about, but somehow through his discussions with this fire, he like he's looking into the flames, and the flames are reflected in his eyes. And after this, he then, anytime you look at him, he always has the reflection of fire in his eyes. And I just thought that was a really cool little detail that, like, he's somehow been corrupted in this, like, pyromaniac ways.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that whenever, like, I don't know, the cast factions like interact or corrupt each other, like usually they have such blunt interactions, which is like battle. It's really interesting to see like a Skaven be corrupted by a like Slaneshi demon. When it's like, it feels natural. I guess Skaven can be corrupted in any direction in the Chaos Pantheon pretty simply. Like they have, they're all terrible all the time. But I thought this was a very interesting like interaction between two factions in a way that we don't usually see them interact. And so I thought that was it was good. It was good. It's more of like the obsession kind of part of Slanesh. Like, this guy totally had the spark, no pun intended. Of obsession that could easily, I mean, he was already obsessed, but like that was really easy to do for this game. And like, do more of the burning. How about? He's like, oh yeah.
I mean,
twist my arm. Sure. Yeah. I'm almost surprised it doesn't happen more often.
I mean, it feels like one of those things that I'd like to see them do more, where it's like these subtle hints of like, well, why did this person turn to chaos? Like, what was it that suddenly tipped them over the edge? And I mean, obviously Skaven are already chaos, but like to become so much more than just like a random Skaven guy. I don't know. I'd like to see them use that kind of plot device more often.
Well, man, I have to belabor this point because there's more plot to get through. But I think I remember Paven mentioning in a previous episode how you liked when two characters who don't normally go at each other do, like, two new interactions when the Teclis and Nagash thing happened. But in the same vein, I love to see the interplay between two factions that isn't just, I'm going to stab you, I'm going to slice you. Like, how can two factions interact that isn't just, like you said, just blunt warfare? There are creative ways for every different combination to occur, and to see those explored uniquely is delightful. Like, that's what I think in my mind what makes Warhammer really cool. It's a game full of unique, bespoke factions that can interact with each other in unique ways, and this is one example of that.
definitely.
And then the city burns down.
Basically.
Yeah, then I think this next couple of, we'll call out the things that we like about it, but the next couple sections or paragraphs are really just classic Warhammer battle stuff, where it's
very much
Skaven spilling out, what the city has to do to defend itself. The Skaven get the upper hand, the city gets the upper hand, and then I think maybe the final move or motion is the charge of the Knights Excelsior. So they hop on their
Dracoths.
Yeah, there you go.
It's pretty cool. Like the Skaven have taken up a position, I believe, near the docks where their gnaw holes were.
Yeah.
And they had created like kill zones, like firing lanes down the streets, and like nothing could get by without being like electrocuted and fried and burned, and using all that technology, except a full plated Stormcast on Mini Dragon just charging down, and some get blown away, but eventually they're able to like bulldoze the position. And I think our Skaven hero, does he escape? Does he slip away at the end?
He does, yeah. I think if he jumps in a knot hole, or maybe just a regular hole, or maybe some combination of the two.
He just like blasts off into the space.
Blasting off again. But he does, escaped, I think, to fight another day, but not.
So I found
forever.
that it just says that he disappears into the flames.
Ooh, which could be the exact opposite. I mean,
who knows where he went?
If I disappeared in the flames, that means I'm dead. That's a dead thing.
Yeah, but they say that he danced out of the way of his attackers and disappeared into the flames.
That also sounds like something I do.
Yeah. Okay.
Probably they're maybe saving him for something, or saving him for in case they want him for something.
Yeah. Could come back. Maybe not.
The coolest thing would be Skaven Slaneshi Demon.
Ooh.
Or even just a clan of Skaven that are corrupted by Slanesh, just like Clan Pestilence is corrupted by Nurgle. Be pretty cool.
And so the city is quote unquote saved, despite the fact that it's literally like burning as we speak.
Yeah.
But the city rallies, at least for a brief moment. It kind of forgets for a hot second, maybe forgets its fascination or like determination to like extinguish all magic in order to like rally and try, and save what it can of like sort of the interior of this city. And while this is happening, so conveniently, or maybe planned, I don't know.
The main event.
I know it's planned. Well, it's just that while it's happening, it shifts like camera real quick. Like it's again a classic movie move where like we get a glimpse of this place that we've never seen before, where all these elves are have been tied up and are being ritually sacrificed in front of all these mirrors that are then getting cracked by actually more Skaven who apparently had snuck in during the attacks. And in doing so, the combination of elven blood and cracked mirrors, a lot of this culminates in an entry point for the twins who are that Slanesh newborn sort of reborn. And so I guess maybe we don't know that. Do we know that it's the twins yet, or that something's coming through the mirrors? I can't remember.
We know that it's them
Okay.
because they very specifically are called out. There's also a full page art of, I think it's Dexessa.
Oh.
After coming through the mirrors.
There's a good hint. There's a good clue as it's rolling up. And so we are now, if we didn't know before, we definitely know now that all this Skaven thing was all a ruse, a ploy, a distraction to allow this a different sort of invasion to begin in the secreted underbelly parts of this here city by Slanesh.
Yeah. So
Part one.
Good job, Slanesh. You definitely brought about a whole helping of trouble for this city.
Yeah. Part two.
Yeah.
The
Hard
rampage.
cut here.
Yeah. Miles and miles away, leagues away to the rampage
years ago.
Kragnos. Yeah. So now it starts with the coast of Tusk, which is it's the same map. I think it just has a bunch of.
Yeah. It's just more focused.
Yeah. A little more focused. But that's not interesting. We can't podcast a map, but what we can podcast
is try.
Kragnos, the End of Empires. A little bit of an origin story about the titular character of this here book. As I mentioned before, I deliberately didn't reread it again. So does anybody want to talk about Kragnos's from whence this Kragnos has come?
Yeah. Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about some Drogruk.
I don't want to anymore. No.
Oh, okay. Well, here we go. Done. Yeah. So we get an interlude here. So obviously we are left suspenseful with the impending doom of Excelsis to go way back in time, pre-Age of Myth, to learn a little bit about a race of giant centaurs called Drogruk. And among these centaurs is our title character, Kragnos. So we find out that he is the son of a tribal leader of the Drogruk, and that is Gorgos. And basically, we find out that he's a real jerk,
There you go.
real bad guy. And he, is like, he beats it describes him as having beaten his brother to a pulp and is chastised for that. And he chooses, and he decides to strike out with his closest companions, and they head out into Gur to just wage war on basically everybody.
If you're in Gore, you're getting war you're getting war waged with you.
Yeah. And so he's described as having these just terrible rampages across Gur. And everyone is just living in fear of this giant monster, Drogruk, who is just unbridled rage all over the realm. But the orcs think that is awesome and are all about it. And they start to worship him as this just superhero. And they basically say, like, they start telling the tales of the boss Trampla and saying how great he is. And basically every time they tell his story, it becomes even greater and greater. And so eventually they effectively deify him and he becomes something of a god. And in that journey, he finds some artifacts that empower him even more. He takes, what was it made out of? It's like some sort of a geomantic nexus of Gur forged into a weapon called the Dread Mace. And he also finds a shield that had been discarded by Gorka Morka as he tried to eat it and broke his tooth on it and was like, man, I can't eat this. I don't need anything with that. Throws it away. But by going and finding this shield, it's something so powerful that it can stop a god. So he now has that as well. So armed with his new shield called Tuskbreaker and his mighty Dread Mace, he is now ready to continue his rampages even more so. And doing this, like I said, the orcs continue to build him up even more. And like he starts to believe their stories too. And like he accepts their offerings that they give to him. And so he's like eating bones and of these like great beasts that the bone splitters bring him. And they also bring him amber bone, which is the realm stone of Gur. And he eats so much of that he actually does eventually gain the power of Gur and becomes a demigod. And over the course of a number of these stories, like I said, he continues to like believe more and more so of what the orcs are saying about him, because like their stories keep getting greater and greater. But as he believes it like the magic of Gur in him allows the stories to like become manifest. And so they like start to say how like, oh, his hoofbeats are like earthquakes. And then suddenly when he stamps on the ground, it actually creates earthquakes. So some fun little callbacks to like how orc magic works in the old world and in 40K, where like they just believe things into existence. And if their belief is strong enough, they can make anything happen, which I think has always been a fun little tidbit for the orcs. But yeah, so that's sort of some background on him and his race. And then, I mean, I guess I don't know how long you guys just want me to talk.
Yeah. You're doing great. Tell us about the dragons.
Sure.
That's all David wants is the dragons.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't?
Dragons, Phil?
Who doesn't want dragons? Well, if you wanted dragons, here you go. You're going to learn about some dragons, and then unfortunately, don't get too attached because they're all going to die.
We're going to go. We're going to smash them.
But so we find out that across all the realms, or across all of Gur, these rampages have been going on. Kragnos winds up back at what is called the Draconith home realm of these mountain ranges in Vexothia.
You're just making these words up now.
I mean, I wish, but some of these, it's a mouthful. But so he sort of remembers how, like, oh yeah, we used to fight alongside these guys, and we were fighting the dragon ogres in the Thunderscorn, the group of the Thunderscorn dragon ogres, and like we were bros.
Let's fight.
But effectively, he, at this point, he's gotten so powerful that he's just kind of like, you know what? It'd be fun to like prove that I am the strongest, and like everyone should recognize that. And so it shows that the accord between the Draconith and the Drogruk that his father had forged, he's just like, don't care. I know we're allies, but I'm going to go and crack some heads to prove once and for all that I am truly the most powerful being in all of Gur. And he wages war on the Draconith.
Yeah, I try to read it less as like nonsense decision making and more that he has now become so infused with the realm stone of Gur and with like Orc Wa energy that he is more akin to a force of nature than a sentient thinking being, like than a character that can have reasonable motivations. And so because he is such a brutal and savage creature, he's just looking around for the biggest thing he can possibly fight, and that is the power in Gur is the other power in Gur is these sonic beings.
And I think I think you're right, and I think that that's not even inconsistent with his story all along. Like his whole thing has always been, I want to prove that I'm the most powerful. I deserve to have respect. And so, like, it's not just senseless rampages. It's like, how do you prove in a world where might is the only thing that you're the best? Is like, you have to be able to prove it in a fight. And so he has like made it his mission to prove that he is the most powerful being and that he is like the top dog. Or
he's more
centaur,
of a horse centaur kind of guy. Yeah.
This might be a weird callback, but what was that South Park episode with Russell Crowe where he does the travel show and he something fighting around the world?
And he just like fights things all across the world. Yeah.
Strong Kragnos vibes.
Right. But yeah, so like, I guess I would say for people who, and this is maybe a bit tangential, but I have definitely seen and heard some criticism of Kragnos and people basically being like, why is he so dumb? And it's like, I don't think he's dumb. I just think his motivations aren't like it's simple. There really isn't anything more to it. Like
he's not dumb. He's just simple.
No, I'm not saying that
he's not good.
I'm not saying that he is simple. I'm saying that like he doesn't have more motive. Like his end goals aren't complex.
Let's save the Kragnos' dumb fight for later when he gets even dumber.
That's fair. That's fair. I think that's fine. But so I mean, if he needs to prove that he's the best and that he's the biggest, he definitely does a good job because he beats up some dragons. The only reason that he doesn't defeat them all immediately is because they have magic and are able to run away from him.
Also, their wings, I imagine, help.
Well, I'm sure they were able to fly away, but
Yeah, so he starts a war against the dragons. He first beats up all their pets. I think was a fun way to piss them off, and then eventually they start to fight him, and they kill a bunch of his like comrades like during the battle, and then he gets really mad. He wants to eradicate all of these. What were they? What were their names again? I'm sorry.
Draconith Empire.
The Draconith, yeah. And so he starts to like purge them from Gur, and then eventually the dragons are losing this war once happens over decades or however whatever time period we're talking about, and as Phil mentioned, they have magic and they start to commune with a kind of a mystical group of beings to them that have been around even longer, and that is the Slann of the Lizardmen. And they hear the plight of the dragons, and they're like, "No, this Kragnos guy is no good." And I don't know. Does Aaron? Do you want to take us home? What does Croak do?
I do want to just jump at this slight thing of Croak, where we get some of his old names, and they're Kurek, Croak, and Cribbit. And I have to say, I really love Lord Cribbit. And I think that we need to also remember him as Lord Cribbit as well as Croak from now on. But anyway.
Okay. Well, they lure him to the mountain, to the top of the mountain. I forget what the lure is. God, I don't know it well enough. Look it up. They lure him to the mountain, and then it falls, and then he like tries to fight it.
Oh, so I mean, basically, when they're so the Draconith make a deal with the Seraphon, so it's not a one-way street. They say, "Hey, look, we're being eradicated, and there's only so many of our eggs left, right? Because wasn't Kragnos running around smashing eggs and stuff too?
He was. So they stomping on them.
Yeah, they were off. They offer up the last of their eggs, and in exchange, the Slann would give all that they had to defeat the earthquake god in whatever way they could. And so they, like you said, they lure them to the Twin Horn Peak. And Kragnos is apparently so swollen on Realm Stone that that the sides of the mountain just sort of crumble away as he approaches it. He's so like massive and giant. And he starts smashing up like Slann and stuff too. So like he's even tearing into the Lizardmen, which is pretty hardcore. But then apparently he reaches like one of these higher peaks. But when she sort of reaches the summit, he realizes, oh no, this isn't just a regular peak, but it's like a hollowed out like dead creature, which apparently Gur's just chock full of. In fact, I'm sure Gur's just mostly hollowed out dead creatures.
I would think so.
Yeah, and in doing so, like a magic spell like causes it to collapse, and the image of Dracothian, I don't know if it's actually Dracothian, wraps him up, and they slam him down into the center of this mountain. Right? Am I remembering that correctly?
That is correct. So that he couldn't fight his way out. And while he was immobilized, they then basically they erect a magical barrier around him so that he cannot get out, and then close him inside the mountain to never escape ever again.
Never, ever.
Except Alariel.
And they say they remove him from the time itself. So they take him out of the timeline, really to like lock him away in a stasis. And I think he when he does wake up, spoiler alert, he feels like no time has passed. He's like wondering what the heck happened. And I want to mention that it's actually like an alliance of three. It's the Drake Lords of the Empire. It is the Lord Croak or Cribbit of the Lizardmen, and it's Dracothian itself, the God Beast, and all three kind of gang up and create this plan to lock away Kragnos.
Well, there's a lot of scales involved in that.
Yeah, it's the alliance of cold blood. It's
not much of a spoiler alert because he's locked in this mountain. Fast forward untold millennia. And we're back at the present day. We're in the midst of Alariel's life quake, what have you. And that very mountain that Kragnos is buried underneath, it's got a bunch of Gurian trees growing up on it. And that's Alariel's bread and butter. And so those trees start to flourish and, get bigger, and the roots start to dive deep into this mountain. And I wouldn't have pegged Croak's force field, its weakness, to be tree roots like my dad's septic tank, but here they go down and they pierce it, and that is all Kragnos needs to sort of break free of the force field or the magical jail that's locked him inside this mountain. It doesn't solve his mountain problem, which he then has to like literally fight his way out of.
I also read that it's not only like the roots, but it's like the wave of death magic kind of destabilized it, and then the wave of life magic kind of destabilized it more, and then maybe the tree roots are the straw that like break at least the time portion of the spell.
So then maybe it's life and death magic that did the thing to the septic tank too. Okay, so that makes sense. Yeah.
But yeah, so it was the combination of the Necroquake and Alario's life magic both broke the spell. And then I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, that he just wakes up and is like, okay, I guess I got to get out of this mountain, and just punches his way out of the mountain. Because, as you do.
I don't know if that needed any more description. He punches his way out.
The one thought is that, like, normally when you say someone punches out of a mountain, which is an absurd sentence to say, I don't think I've ever said the phrase punches his way out of a mountain. So like any other mountain, you're like, oh, he's just tunneling through rocks and stuff. But in Gur, like, everything's alive. Like, that mountain is alive, and he just punched his way out of its stomach or something like that. It's you don't normally have to personify geological things, but in Gur you do. And so like he killed that mountain. It was alive.
Yeah.
I think like in the mortal realms, mountains are more often alive than dead.
Statistically,
unless it's like the undead mountain of the necropolis.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's one of those.
Poor mountain. Why does no one even care about the mountains? But yeah, he busts his way out, and I think his first motivating factor it's to find his people. Right, that's what he's most interested in doing.
Yeah. So I mean, he does. Like, I don't know. They mentioned that he had dreamt about like getting his revenge and wanting to go and smash the drakes. But then when he actually comes out, that isn't exactly the first thing that he does. So
like, where is everything?
But he is definitely mad, which seems to be his one state of being. And he's ready to go on a rampage yet again. Yeah,
so he heads to like his ancestral homeland, like thinking that like maybe he'll find some evidence. If not, like his people, he can see where they went. Like Payman said, I don't think he expects them to have been wiped off the face of the planet, but like we know that is true, that they are no longer around, and he's about to find that out too. But he's got a ways to go. He's got to run there.
He like mentions not being able to like recognize a lot of stuff because all the continents have changed in Gur, and I imagine that happens more in Gur than like Earth. But still, it's something that takes a while. And kind of a sad thing that happened. I don't know if this is sad, but like the continent had died. Like it's a living thing and it's died, and it's the carcass of Danse. Which is like now mostly just being fed upon by two neighboring continents, Thondia and it's in the map. One of the other ones. So it's kind of like this. I don't know what a dead continent looks like, but it kind of looks that way on the map. So he heads that way. And while that's happening, I guess are we ready to jump to other guys that are doing it?
Do it. Yeah.
So there's been a Wa trying to march on Excelsis since like our Christmas episode. Like, we kept talking about that thread. And so we're picking up there. We got giants, we got goblins, we got Skagrat. Savrat's there, Gordrak's there. A bunch of Mega Gargants have joined. This is kind of this wall that's just marching toward Excelsis because they can feel something's coming. So a couple important things are happening. One is that Gordrak has gotten one of the God Beast artifacts, which is it's a huge battering ram that uses the skull of a God Beast as it. And but he's supposed to find two other artifacts.
The Hammer Gourd is the name of the battering ram.
Hammer Gourd, yeah, and it's like a big ram God Beast that died. I think Sigmar maybe killed it, but it was in a storm vault. They bust it open, they get it, they attach it to a battering ram. That's one of their main weapons. And then there's two other artifacts, but they're hard to get. Like, Gardrak was loosely on board with to get them. But
The Basha Shard, or probably Basha Shard.
Basha Shard.
Yeah.
And that one was, I think, buried by the Stormcast in a mountain.
In the Tusk Vault, and I think it was buried either by the storm. Yeah, a combination of Hammers of Sigmar and some Fire Slayers were defending it, and so they said, if we can't have it, no one can, and so they buried it in the mountain.
And they're like, oh man, like I don't want to dig that up. Like orcs are very impatient. And then the other thing is the Golden Amulet. This is the third. These were the things that he is prophesized to get, and Skagrot is good on prophecy, and he's like, "Hey, if we're gonna win, we need the Fist of Gork to have these artifacts. It's part of the prophecy." But Skagrot is a devious grot, and he's like, "I'm not telling him that." And so he sends another named Goblin character, one of the few we have, which is Schnazgar Stink Mullet.
Yeah,
yeah. And he's back from the Malign Sorcery. He's the named Fungoid Cave Shaman. When the Fungoid Cave Shaman originally got released, it was Snazgar.
Yeah.
And he sends Snazgar, which is part of Skagrot's Gloomsight kits. And he sends them like, yeah, hey, you wise grot, go, you got to tell Gordrak what's up. He needs to get the items, the magic items. So as Snazgar goes, he starts talking to Gordrak. He's like, hey, the prophecy, you just got to dig up the Basha Shard, then we got to get the amulet, and then we're good to go. And Gordrak's like, nah, I'm not doing that. And then he kills him. That was great. And I was like, all right, yeah, it's good. I always enjoy named character dying because I feel like IPs are so afraid of doing it. And I'm like, all right, we're playing with stakes here. So Snazgar's gone. See you later. And the orcs march. They start to march on Excelsis.
One funny bit about the golden amulet is that when he tells him that you need to get the amulet, Gordrak's exact response is, was a amulet. He just doesn't even know what it is. And he tries to explain what an amulet is to him. And he's just like, man, I don't got time for this.
He's like, nah, this isn't fighting.
Yeah, this isn't bashing. So
thing is, you can't kill someone with a fancy necklace.
Yeah. I wonder, this is quite an aside, but we love Gordrak's characterization, right? It's so honest and fun, he just wants to punch, and he
yeah,
simple,
the Iron Jaw way.
Yeah. And he's also clever,
Cunning.
He's cunning. He's cunning.
Yeah.
He's cunning. Oh my God, cut it out. I'll never be on a podcast again. Yeah, he's cunning. He's cunning, but brutal. And Kragnos, I feel lives in the uncanny valley of he's brutal, but he also has makes weird choices that aren't I don't know what it is about there's some kind of parabola where you're cool here being dumb, and then if you're a little bit smarter, it's actually less cool. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand.
We'll put it on the website. We'll put up all the graphs and figures. Will be at the www.
There's a lot of visual aids in this here story, but like you said, Gordrak decides, no, we're done with these artifacts. We're going straight for the Humi City Big Teeth, and then we're gonna trash it into the dirt.
Yeah.
And interesting, I'm glad Gordrak's here because we thought Gordrak was going to be Broken Realms Gordrak, and this was going to be book 2 or book 5 or something this.
And it should have been,
but yeah, Kragnos.
We'll have to have that discussion.
Yeah.
So we're I'm gonna forge ahead. So we have 2 armies kind of marching. The Wa Gordrak is marching towards Excelsis, but it's on the way to you have to go through the Carcass Dance on the way, and that's where Kragnos is going. And Kragnos on the way meets up with some Mega Gargants and kills a bunch just on the hop because they're just let's punch it, and then he just smashes them in the face, and then they start to follow him. They're like, oh, he's the biggest now, and so they follow him, and eventually these 2 armies meet, and it's a big old punch up. And we get our Battle of the Titans. Okay, I want to do a quick blow by blow of it. It's no Teclis v Nagash, but there's some good moments.
I found it more entertaining.
I don't want to give you a big head about it, but everybody loved your Teclis V Nagash. So
Yeah, I took some notes here. Okay, so we have like huge, like big armies fighting. There's a ton of like they're in this, I believe, in like a valley here, like a kind of between like two plateaus, and Skagrot's kind of scoping it out up top, seeing how it goes. Like there's a Maw Crusher Gargant tribe and like some Mega Gargants that are following Kragnos. And then there's this huge wall of orcs, and they're kind of just like funneling into this like scrap, like not only like a fight, but also like metal is going everywhere, and it's like a huge bloody punch up, and you have this god of earthquakes barreling through, and so Skagrot's looking down. I think Gordrak's looking down at the fight. And Kragnos is just beating everything up. The bad moon starts to peak up, so we got like all the kind of the great elements of destruction kind of starting to
just peeking.
He's peeking. He's like, oh, I don't know what's going on over here. Bad moon's great. So it starts like three Maw Crushers, the smaller Gargants, like charge. Gordrak.
So Maw Crushers are the orc mounts, right? Is it the
Man Crushers?
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. We got Gordrak on Big Tooth, which is a Maw Crusher, which is like a big toad dragon. And then we got the Man Crusher Gargants, which are regular sized giants. Then we got the Mega Gargants, which are also fighting. So three Man Crushers charge Gordrak. He messes them up. One cool thing that happens is like Big Tooth just like grabs one of them by the chest with its mouth and like shakes it like a crocodile, and like spits it up, a fountain of gore. And so we each, they get to show like how cool they are, and like Kragnos is smashing like everything aside, just like tons of orcs and trolls and like everything part of this horde. And then like orc shamans are trying to like shoot magic at Kragnos, and that doesn't work against him because he's got the shield that reflects all the magic. And then we're like, all right, let's get to business. And like, Gordrak's like, the big one. And he kicks the spurs into Big Tooth, and Big Tooth charges at Kragnos. Okay, so blow by blow, here we go. Kragnos attacks with the mace. Big Tooth dodges and like blocks it with the wing, breaks its wing, but not too bad, not a killing blow like that mace delivers. And then Gordrak starts like crawling, grabs onto the mace, and gets lifted off the the Maw Crusher. Maw Crusher like bites into the chest of Kragnos, and so he's like holding on. The Big Tooth, the meanest, biggest Maw Crusher that exists. And then Kragnos, like they say, like a gorilla is starting to like crawl all over Kragnos, like trying to like get at him and attack him, and like is like loving it, just chopping him up with his axe, like fighting a god. As like a really big mean orc, but still like this weird, fighting a tiny, like a gremlin. And then Kragnos tries to like, he can't quite get him off his hand, so he tries to eat him. And Gordrak like starts like attacking his tongue with his axes, and like uses his axes to keep the mouth open. And then like Kragnos like, oh, that didn't work, and he like spits out the axe. All the while like Gordrak's like howling and whining, and like he's getting really humped up. He's like, I got it. And then Big Tooth is like, oh, we could get him. And then he lets go of Kragnos' chest of his mouth, and like tries to go for the killing blow. And that's the opening that Kragnos needs, because he'd been like trying to get like Big Tooth off, like hitting him with his shield. But now that he's got a little space, he gets it with a big backhand, and then comes down with the hammer right on top of Big Tooth's head. So huge blows, knocks Big Tooth into like a big pillar of rocks. It all like comes like a whole huge, like part of a mountain comes falling on all of them, kind of like Avengers style, where like everything's made of cardboard, and it like buries everybody except for Gordrak, who like rolls onto the ground and is sitting back up. And then Kragnos is first up. Big Tooth like gets up next and like starts trying to fight, and Kragnos hits him with like a big mule kick, knocks him unconscious. Big Tooth is down. Kragnos has the initiative. He's like much bigger and like ready for just Gordrak by himself. Gordrak's there. I think he's only got one axe in his hand. He's ready for the end. And Skagrot's like, oh boy, I kind of need the big orc. I'm too invested here. And so like, in a little bit of cliche fashion, he like talks to the moon. He's like, hey, moon, bail me out. And the moon, like, was like, sure. And he like spits out a bunch of moon pellets, and it like makes a perfect, like, I don't know, like a wall, wall between Gordrak and Kragnos. And they're like, oh no, like, we're separated now. And there's like a pregnant pause. And then Kragnos is like, hey, man, you want to go fudge up that city over there? and Gordrak's like, yeah, sure. And then they go, and they're friends now.
He's like, yeah, come on, boys, let's do it.
Do we just become best friends?
And then you get the meme with the Predator handshake between Kragnos and Gordrak, and in the middle, it's like, mess up Excelsis.
Yeah. So pretty good fight. Did have the thing where like rubble comes between the two named character opponents, but it had a little bit more like relevance here. And the Skagrat is, I really like Skagrat as a destruction character because he has, he has more complex behaviors.
He's very cunning.
Cunning.
And like in this fight, Gordrak was way cooler than Kragnos. Like Gordrak is like,
yeah,
he was obviously outmatched and he did not care. And like, it didn't even seem to like phase him one bit. And so because of that, I just liked him so much. I mean, who isn't on Gordrak's side? Like what reader isn't rooting for Gordrak in this fight? I don't know. It's crazy to me.
Yeah. And I don't know, like the orcs are such gorilla looking models that I just have such a clean picture of him like crawling over Kragnos and like, yeah, it's such a great visual image there. Yeah. Okay. So that is how they join forces. Now there's one unified destruction army marching on Excelsis.
Mega Wa.
Wasn't mega before, it is now. And march they shall. I'm trying to think, where does the scene go from here? I think we switch camera angles, right? Now that there's this unified Wa heading towards Excelsis. We head back to Excelsis and we get a little bit of a glimpse of how the city is trying to clean up the previous mess and then also prepare for the next one, right? And so it's a combination of eradicating what Skaven forces are left, but then also seeing to like the both physical and like magical defenses of the city. And it was a lot of, like Cities of Sigmar cannon preparations, and they're getting the Hellstorm batteries and all that jazz to make sure that the walls are squared away. Maybe not literally, I don't know what shape Excelsis is, but then furthermore, is it here that like the Seraphons start aiding to the defenses as well, and maybe even Croak lends his
let's
it is in this part.
Yeah, let's talk about like let's do a quick inventory of like who is arrayed against who. Because like on the, I rather than like, I don't know, I guess going through the narrative beats of how everybody gets involved. On the side of destruction, we have like all the aforementioned characters. We got Kragnos, we have a wall of orcs, we have Skagrat, king of the gloom spite. Gordrak, fist of Gork. We have a big old Dankold Trogoth. He has a special name. We have a like Bundo whale biter, I think, who is a
Kraken eater
mega gargant, and there's a couple of things they do, like instead of just run up. Like I believe the Kraken eater tribe goes into the water and tries to circle around the city that way, as well as like a flotilla of bone spitter orcs.
Yep,
they're like trying to make a go around move. Another thing that Skagrat has done is he's paid off a bunch of ogre mercenaries to go offer their services to Excelsis to help defend the city, but to betray at just the right moment and then eat them.
I love that part.
So we got some real cunning behavior going here. There's also a couple cool. Let me see. There's another character, Golgaz Stoneclaw, who is a war boss of the Blown Splitters of the Flamescar Plateau, and this was the first Age of Sigmar army I played. Because for that box set campaign, oh my god, I forgot what it was called. That took place on the Flamescar Plateau, and you had like a bunch of special rules, and this is where the first Cities of Sigmar rules came out, and there's like a unified destruction force. I'm sure you got it back there, Aaron.
Yeah, but what's it called though?
Yeah, well, I played a Golgaz what is his name? Stoneclaw list, where it was like a unified Greenskins army, and you have to roll like extra dice because he has like 2 shrunken heads on each of his shoulders that he gets like tactical insight from, and you got like extra dice to roll on your like, I don't know, your tactics dice, because you could hear what like those
nice.
heads were saying. So that's a raid on the destruction side. So pretty mean over there. And on the defenders of Excelsis, we have the kind of the standing regiments. I don't know if I have their names in front of me, but they have like illustrious histories and like, I don't know, the Gold Company and the the Lions of Excelsis or
right.
They are. We have
those are convincing made up names. I believe.
we have the Stormcast that are there. We spent a lot of time talking. I should not be. Somebody else do the Excelsis side. I'm doing a terrible job.
I will say that I believe it's Firestorm is what you were talking about before.
Firestorm,
that's the one.
Firestorm was great. And also, every time I mention Firestorm, I also mention that like it was a bunch of newer players and Josh, my co-host from Dogs of Warcry, and he like kicked our butts up and down that game. He was like undefeated by a lot. He was playing like KO, and I was like just bringing my old like Warhammer Greenskins, and he like tabled me every game we played. He was like leaf blowed me off the table.
Yeah, old first tome for KO. Fun days.
Ruthless. He was ruthless.
So for the Order forces trying to shore things up in Excelsis, I honestly didn't even remember that the actual cities of Sigmar, like just defenders, had regimental names and things that were called out in the story. So obviously it stood out a lot. But there are a lot of them. They are working to get the walls prepared. We know that we've got people from around the area. So just like tribes of people from around Gur that have come to help defend the city. There are some fire slayers in the city who are helping to defend. We've got obviously the Stormcast forces for the Knights Excelsior. Then there's Caradron fleets that are patrolling the skies. And I think the only other groups, because they make a point of saying how the elves have basically abandoned the city at this point, so we don't have any Scourge privateers or any of the elves helping defend. But we know that there are... So we already know that there were Seraphon forces in the city because of their like pyramid. I don't know if you want to call it like an embassy or whatever, but so there are Seraphon.
I'm sorry, I do want to call it an embassy. I think that's fun.
It's a great name for it.
Okay. And at some point Croak rolls in to the city.
It's super convoluted. I'm just reading it now and I forgot how like roundabout they do it. Do you mind if I mention it?
Go for it.
Okay, so I believe the White Reaper, our friend, is about to die at the end of the Skaven fight. And he's like all covered in poisonous Eshin darts, and he's like, "Oh my god, like what do we do?" And he's like, "I know, I need to talk to Gardas. He'll know."
Right. Yeah, that's how.
So he like tells an Aetherwing or somebody he knows, and he's like, "Hey, tell to get the Steel Soul. Like we need his help." And then like somebody talks to Gardas. Gardas is over there. Gardas prays about it, and he communes with the Slann, and he communes with Lord Croak, and he's like, "Hey, what about Excelsis? Can we help out?" And Croak's like, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It was like they didn't say anything, but he knew the message was received. And then Croak shows up in Excelsis.
And I think this is later, but we might as well just mention it now that like somehow Croak is invisible to everybody as he like shows up in the city and goes about adding magical defenses, but nobody knows he's there, and he's, I'm assuming, doing that on purpose. I'm not really sure why though.
You're not meant to know, man. The plans.
If you don't believe in Lord Croak, you can't see him.
Oh,
Sure.
Okay. Fair.
But true believers like me and Paven.
They go to pretty great lengths to describe the sort of setup of the defenses and the walls and the free guild like arsenals and just all this stuff that, I mean, it's cool to get that level of detail, especially if you're a Cities of Sigmar player, so that you have like something to go on with the structure of the army and how it all works. But in terms of actually like moving the story forward, there's a good number of pages of stuff that doesn't really add a whole lot. So it's, I don't know, it's sort of the back and forth of like, and then stuff happens, parts of Warhammer writing that,
yeah,
it's fun.
Well, I got a fun tidbit here. So you're right. Croak appears invisible to everybody except for Doralia Van Dens, the one of the
right.
daughter we've talked about, and she goes to the temple and she's like, hey, what's going on? Like, there seems to be, she doesn't see the salon, but she hears about the hubbub of the Elizabeth. They're like, hey, don't worry, like a really big deal's here. We're all going to be fine. And then it says like what wasn't communicated is that the death of Excelsis was calculated to be an acceptable loss. By the salon, as long as they had enough, as long as it took long enough for them to seal all of the realm gates to Gur.
Yeah.
Like even Croak is like kind of pooping his pants about Kragnos because it took so much to get rid of him that they're just like, you know what, Gur, lost cause. There's just 8 realms now.
I think
so. It's not Gur. It's the Gurish heartlands. So it's just part of Gur. It'd be way funnier if it was all Gur. It's just the region.
Like, the Gurish heartland. Yeah, we'll just see it's still continent. These collection of continents. We're calling it a wash.
Yeah, write them off.
It still shows the very like cold-blooded calculations of the Seraphon, where they're just like, yeah, this is probably the most efficient way to make sure that nothing else bad happens because of this guy. They're just literally dooming like 3 continents.
And I love the idea that they're telling her, everything is going to be fine, because for them that is fine. They're not lying. They're not tricking her.
Plan on track.
The great plan will continue. Everything will be fine. You'll be dead, but hey, that doesn't matter.
You should be so lucky.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts about the prep before the 2 forces face each other down? I will say that actually not all the elves left. Apparently some contingent of the Darkling Covens stuck around because they had a vested interest in ensuring that the Spear of Malice didn't fall into enemy hands. And so most other elves had vamoosed, but a few still stuck it out, apparently.
Okay, cool. So there's some elves that didn't think that bigotry was enough to get in the way of them helping the city out.
Well, it's more like they had too much skin in the game.
Fair.
I got too many skeletons in this city. We gotta figure it
out. So the forces of destruction, they arrive, and so it's a classic Lord of the Rings scene where everybody's manning the walls, and you see literally the orcs off in the distance, and so they proceed to advance on the city. Specifically, they send in the trolls or Troggoths first, and so the defenders of the city start lighting them up, basically cannon fire and rocket batteries and the whole 9 yards. And they seem to be doing like incredible damage. Like, a lot of firepower is arrayed against these invading forces, and they are wrecking these Troggoths. So it would seem, as they continue to advance, and their limbs are getting blown off, et cetera, et cetera. They look down stupidly, realize, oh no, I'm missing my left arm, and almost unconsciously start to just proceed to grow these things back. And so it turns out that, as we know, that the trolls have an equivalent of a regen roll. This battery is almost ineffective against them because they seem to shrug off all these different wounds and regrow any lost appendages as they advance.
And I think it's interesting that the Skragrot's plan is actually pretty smart, in that the trolls are just a distraction for getting Hammergord basically to the walls, because he knows that like they'll just soak up all the fire, and by the time that anybody realizes that like the real threat is actually this battering ram, it's basically too late.
And that's almost exactly what happens, right? Like the trolls take the firepower. Yeah, the Gargants get the battering ram into position, so to speak. As they're doing so, I think maybe the defenders maybe realize maybe a little too late, and they send out what's the word for a bunch of gyrocopters?
Squadron?
Squadron fleet,
Yeah.
squadron, fleet. These are all great terms.
I don't know.
Dropping dropping
ships?
firebombs down from below, but and they're causing incalculable losses to the destruction forces, but it's still not enough. And they are able, the Gargants are able to weather the storm and get the battering ram all the way up to the gate. Gordrak sees his moment. He's been waiting for this for a long time. Yeah. He rolls up right next to it. I think he hops on top of it.
He hops on top of it. He's like,
standing on the battering ram. He's like, let me hit the wall.
Yeah. So they wind up and they take a big swing, and kablow, the battering ram shatters into 1,000 pieces, ineffective against Lord.
Oh man, what a disappointment! We've been reading about that battering ram longer than we've been reading about like Lord Croak in Age of Sigmar. Yeah, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Yeah, I want to crack this, chalk this up to like Gordrak actually not meeting the prophecy. Like maybe it will be like he like purposely like didn't do the steps necessary to become the chosen of Gork. And so that's why he like that's a big failure there. He doesn't take down the wall there, and he'd already gotten beaten up by Kragnos. So it's 0-2 for Gordrak here. Although number one in our hearts,
he's number top of my charts. That's the only way I can justify him not cracking that gate, because this has been built up for so long that I needed some satisfaction. And so the only reason I'm able to sleep at night knowing that he didn't break that gate down is because it was his hubris that led to his downfall, and that he didn't fulfill the classic Greek sort of thing where like there's a prophecy and if you don't meet either the prophecy happens no matter what, wonders. Or classic, exactly. And so now I'm comfortable with how this turned out.
I think Gordrak goes like flying over the wall anyway.
Yep.
He's like, woo! Yeah.
This is a great plan B. Like, this is the next best thing.
It's funny because he's like laying on top of the walls, and the guards on top of the walls are like, oh, he's dead. And they're just like poking at him like dead body. And then all of a sudden he like gets up and he's just like, oh, cool, there's guys to fight. And then he just like goes nuts because he's Gordrak.
I like the idea. Again, if this were a movie, the camera would be like zoomed in on his eye as he's laying there getting poked, and then it would just open, and then
get up and
kill folks. But so he's able to, he himself, because he rockets over the wall, is able to get up over the side. Big Tooth like latches onto the wall and like proceeds to climb it himself. But it seems like for a moment these two are the only two that are able to breach the defenses. But that moment does not last long, because the telltale off in the distance is Kragnos has entered the fight. Player 2, so to speak, and he comes rolling up and impact hits the city wall and like destroys like a half mile of it or something crazy.
Yeah, well, he drags his mace along like the rampart of the wall, just like destroying all of it, and I think eventually just like knocks down a huge section, and that's what falls. And then like all right, people start swarming over, and now like there's a battle inside.
It's almost embarrassing how easily Kragnos just absolutely annihilates the walls, because it's like literally the entirety of the rest of this wall couldn't do anything to Excelsis' walls, and then he's just like, yeah, whatever, just run along the wall with my mace like a kid with a stick, just running along a fence, and it just comes tumbling down,
coming through. Yeah. I like to think like this is all for character development for Gordrak. Like this is like Act 1 for the Gordrak epic
character service.
He has to get laid low. He has to get embarrassed. It's like Rocky 2. He's got to start training. He's like, I don't know, he's like doing like math problems and like, trying to be more cunning.
But then you look and it's just gibberish. He hasn't written anything.
Yeah. He's like digging up the Basha stick. What was it called?
Basha shard.
Basha shard, like with his own hand. All right. Well, we digress.
It's true. And so the destruction forces swarm the city. Like through this entryway that Kragnos has made in Excelsis walls, the orcs stream into the city, laying waste to all that they see, and things are not looking good.
Yeah, a bunch of other bad things happen, including the man eaters, the ogres.
Yeah,
the ogres do their curse your inevitable betrayal moment, where they turn the guns on the defenders. The Darko whale biter comes out of the water and starts smashing up the docks along with a bunch of orcs. It's not looking good. And then we have a couple kind of counter punches. I'll talk. The first of which I want to talk about is huge poisoned harpoons fly through the air and start puncturing this mega gargant and pull him down, and he dies an agonizing death on the docks.
So I don't want to steal your thunder, but they were almost inconsequential, but we probably should mention the Slaneshi forces.
Okay, yeah.
Also rising up at this point as well.
Yeah. It's really cool. It's I forgot this happened at the same time. The there becomes a carnival parade of excess following Dexessa and Sinesta.
That is correct.
Nailed it.
How could that be right?
Never mispronounced it. They the excess of the demons, the Nullstone Brotherhood, the perfumed and just and so a bunch of weirdos start dancing in the streets on a parade through the center of Excelsis during the siege on the way to City Hall. So I think that's also happening in tandem.
Yeah, and they march through all those civilians that aren't manning the wall, right? So in doing so, they're growing their numbers, driving everyone mad, and everyone again who isn't defending the city, sort of not unknown to but which enemy are you facing? The folks on the other side of the wall or those inside?
There's just no one to stop them, basically.
Yeah.
I think the people that notice are what the hell is this? What the heck?
Well, yeah, demons all of a sudden.
Yeah. Demons. Okay, let's zoom back in. I want to do the entrance of up first you see a prow, then you see some giant black sails, and you see massive black arcs. So the Scourge privateers have returned, and they're coming to liberate the city. And so they kind of fly up on the darks. They start killing the orcs that had come on their flotillas. They start bringing down the gargants. And do we know? Is it revealed who else comes off the ship at this point, or not quite yet?
I think it is revealed right away. I don't remember.
Yeah, and then also in a big boot in big boots and also a serpent tail. Our favorite new god, definitely our favorite new god of the series.
I think so. Yeah.
Is Marathi Kane, the twin-souled god of murder, comes off the boats here to save our savior.
How quickly we turn. Our opinion changes of this guy. I also want to mention that with the Scourge Privateers comes that Erika Zent that was mentioned before from the Callus and Toll series. So she's kicking butt. She's a BA pirate character.
Yeah, and nothing ever bad happens when Marathi shows up in a city of Sigmar.
Never. Not even once.
Depends whose side you're on.
Can't even imagine what bad things could happen. And I guess we should probably mention that at this point, the Astral Templars who've been off fighting some orcs are hey, Excelsis probably needs help, and show back up and are whoa, what is going on here? And they gleefully join the battle because that's their deal. They like fighting.
Yeah, they're the beast hunter chamber.
Storm. Yep.
Stormhouse.
If there's a fight anchor, you can imagine that the Astral Templars will find it eventually and try and join it. So they give much needed aid to the city as well.
Yeah, and they kill some mega gargants. I think a bunch of paladins try to kill Gordrak, and he kicks their ass anyway. But
I think they try to fight Kragnos too, and that does not go well.
And furthermore, a bunch of Stormcast try to fight a giant troll, and the troll, a Dankhold, kills a bunch of Stormcast.
Oh, yeah. Stormcast are not having a good day.
They're not a great showing. While this is going on, so again, this is the classic Warhammer story, right? It's the back and forth. No, then these reinforcements show up, but then these reinforcements show up, and then these guys get the upper hand. It's at this point that Kragnos actually he sets his sight on the gate. It's one thing to destroy a wall. That's easy. Anybody can destroy a wall. I can destroy a wall. But it's not easy to break down this unbreakable gate, as we saw. The battering ram shattered into a million pieces. And so he rolls up on it. He rears up, if I remember, rears up on his hind legs. Sklablow, that's the sound it made. He kicks it open with his front two hooves because where a magic battering ram can't break open a gate, the end of empires certainly can. And he blasts open Croak's wards as if they were nothing but kindling, and it was more of a symbolic gesture because honestly, he'd really just destroyed the wall moments ago. He didn't really need to do that, but he's flexing on him a little bit.
Yeah, at this point, everything kind of devolves. They talk, just sort of randomly about like all the different little skirmishes that are happening in the streets, different fights between the orcs and the Seraphon and the demons and the Stormcast, and just there's all kinds of fighting everywhere, and obviously it's chaos. The whole city is just overrun by all these different forces. I have to imagine there's basically no significant like lines drawn anymore. Like everything is just a swirl of melees everywhere.
Wait, I want to say, I think slightly before this, when it looks a little bit worse, the conclave of the Excelsis does discuss like a plan, like Omega, which is destroy the Spear of Malice. And of course they would have a plan for this because it's an incredibly potent magical artifact, and they don't want it to fall in the hands of especially Chaos. I think they would be like, destruction. They're not going to know what to do with it, but like they'll probably just ruin it, which is what we want to do. But like, do we need to set off the bombs or whatever kind of magical kind of device they have? And they don't do it, but they do discuss it.
And I think that makes sense, and it's fitting for the city where the Knights Excelsior are from, because they are described, I believe, as having like burned other cities to the ground and purged them because of potential chaos corruption. They're like, we don't mess around. If there's even any chance of something falling to chaos, we just level it. So they would have a plan like that for destroying their own city, I think.
But is it at some point that whether or not they choose to do so, isn't the conclave also, or at least some part of it, taken over by that Slaaneshi like procession, or at least some members of the conclave?
Yeah, I think, but before that, maybe. Let's zoom in there. We're at the city's dark heart. What happened? Okay, so you forgot there was this whole Slaaneshi subplot. How does this? What happened?
So while the battle is raging all throughout the city, for whatever reason, the Witch Hunters and the White Reaper are going to get to the bottom of this Slaanesh problem, regardless of what else is going on in the city. This is their main focus. This is the job that they have to do, is this, and so they head into I wrote it down, the Crystal Fall region of the city. Yeah. From whence the Slaanesh power is coming, and they're going to strike at the heart of it. And so there they find in some dilapidated but like once gorgeous building, they are able to find where all those mirrors and all those elves were sacrificed, deep in this sort of ritual center, where they can find a lot of citizens, and maybe even important citizens, some members of the conclave who are been, I don't know, mind controlled in some way, right? They've been driven mad by the Slaaneshi cult that's sort of been fostering inside the city. And so, but then they also find the twins who are, hanging out, lounging, doing whatever Slaanesh people do, torturing people, being just weirdos, I guess. And so the fight is joined. They need to fight each other to solve this Slaanesh problem. That was a very inelegant way to say that. And so there's a large scale battles outside. There's small scale battles here. The witch hunters are shooting magic bullets and like throwing, swinging their magic swords, trying to, fight off and free the civilians locked in this room in this building.
Well, can I just add one cool detail I liked?
Hit me.
So when they started the fighting, the spell is broken on like the matriarch and her conclave of warriors, and this special warrior group have like amber bone talismans that like activate when they need to fight, and they grow like bestial, and then they join the battle. So I thought that was cool. Little kind of slightly different fighting force from the cities of Sigmar.
Well, and it's what do people who live in Gur, how are they different from other people? Like what sets them apart? Well, these folks have magic amulets that turn them into, beast fighters, which is really cool. I believe, so it's basically the witch hunters win. They're able to, I'm trying to think how the first guy goes down, because the second one, I don't know the difference between the voice and the talon, but one of them basically is locked in like a mortal embrace, like a deadly embrace with the White Reaper, and they kill the White Reaper, but he erupts into lightning and thus killing one of the twins at the same time. So they both like disappear in a cloud of lightning, which is kind of cool. And then the other, I think the first one just gets shot by like a magic bullet inscribed with like Azerian runes, and I might be making that up.
No, that's what happens. It was one of the crossbow bolts, I think, from Duralia.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah.
And it had like Sigmar's name on it or something, and messed up the talon.
Burst apart into 1,000 butterflies and was gone. It's not all guts and gore with these people. Sometimes it's just beautiful butterflies.
Yeah, a little anticlimactic, but yeah, nice.
What's anticlimactic about butterflies, Phil? The most climactic. Yeah, so the Witch Hunters come out on top. I mean, I suppose they lost the White Reaper, but there's no reason to think that he isn't going to get reforged because we're not in Shaman. Yeah. So, like, he heads back to Azir for some much needed R&R. So, I mean, this is literally Slaanesh newborn, the big thing that like we've been interested in the past, I don't know, like 6 months or so. Killed by two humans in a stormcast, and I guess a bunch of other.
We can talk more about the significance of this as we get.
Okay, we resolved the B plot.
Yeah, B plot done. Let's go back to that A plot. All
right,
tell me about it.
So where were we? Chaos in the streets. However, the arrival of Marathi Kane and the daughters of Kane, along with their scourge privateer allies, is really like. Turn the tide of the battle because nobody can really stand up to a god but another god, and so we start to have like a god showdown. And I don't have a play-by-play for this one because I think it's even shorter between Morathi and Kragnos, but Morathi can't take Kragnos. He kind of like beats back Snake Morathi, and like the magic doesn't work because of his awesome shield. And then what happens?
So the Shadow Serpent version of Morathi is like wrapped all around Kragnos, sort of like Hercules style fighting the Hydra. It seems like he's wrapped up, gonna be stuck, but he strangles the serpent to death.
And when he was strangling the snake, she could feel it. Like it says something like her person form could feel the hand on her throat, sort of thing.
Right.
I don't think he kills the snake one. I think they're just like struggling, and she knows she's losing.
Okay. And you're right. It was a very short interaction, but basically, yes, Tuskbreaker makes him completely immune to magic. He's deflecting her blood magic. Croak is around and is also like throwing down meteors on him. And again, they're just bouncing off because he has his shield, which makes him immune to magic. And everybody should have realized a while ago that magic doesn't work on this guy,
And Croak of all people should know that because he's already fought him once.
Yeah, but maybe that was so long ago that he just happened to forget.
Forget stuff? You of all people.
No, I know. He remembers stuff from before they came to the mortal realms. So yeah, no, he should have remembered. There was a bit of a silly plot point where it's like, what are you doing, Croak?
Croak's goal isn't to defeat Kragnos here. I think he knows he can't defeat him. He's trying to buy time while they the continent.
I mean, so yes,
they don't. He's like, I got to go into melee with him to take out Kragnos.
But they don't really reference that at all in this interaction, though. Like, eventually, it gets to the point where Morathi just has the call out to Croak. It is like, hey, we can't beat this guy. We should, what you can't defeat, you should redirect. And he's like, you know what? You're right. Let's trick this guy.
He's like, I didn't think of that.
Which makes me wonder, like, was he really actually, like, I don't know, did the writers forget that they were supposed to be like going through with a different Seraphon plot point and they just forgot about it? Or did Croak forget? Like, but either way.
Imagine it's something maybe Croak was just like, hey, we're going to try to take this guy down. If I can't do it, I'm just going to teleport out of here and then we're going to go to plan B. I mean, it's better to save the city if I can.
That maybe makes more sense.
And also, Croak doesn't have quite the same guile that Marathi does. Like, they combine spells here,
right?
Where Croak opens up a portal through space and time, and then Marathi gives an illusion.
Michael.
And it's like, what is it? It's like dragon eggs.
He hears like the roar of his old mortal enemy, and it distracts him, and he's like, hey, I'm more mad at them than I am at all of you. I got to go deal with that first, but this isn't over. I'll be back.
Where did this portal come from? Like, oh yeah, see you guys later. I'm definitely going through this portal. I'm going to finish up here later. He leaves. He jumps through the portal. And it was a trick.
I almost got the impression he knew, like he didn't know, but he kind of like, I don't know.
He didn't know it was a trick, but he
yeah, he knew it was a portal.
I think he recognized that it's not like it's a portal from Croak, but because it's a portal to the thing that he hates the most in like the whole universe.
You think he would hate Croak the most in the whole universe?
He locked him up, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that he would hate Croak the most, but for some reason they say that no, he cares more about.
I mean, the dragons didn't really do anything to him besides
they were friends.
Killed some of his buddies. But
yeah, I mean, to be fair,
he was the aggressor.
Yeah, he started it.
Yeah, but the lizardmen he didn't start it with, but they still trapped him under a mountain for 10 million years.
Yeah,
it's like trying to understand an earthquake's motivations. You're not going to be.
Yeah,
he's a force of nature.
He works ways out of there through the portal, and
the portal ends up being not to any sort of dragons or draken.
I think it pops him at a dread. I think maybe in this story he pops him at a Dreadfort.
It is at a Dreadfort, yeah, along some mountain range, like way far away. And when he gets there, I think it says something about him just like realizing he'd been tricked or whatever.
Oh, I got tricked again!
Being super, super mad and like letting out this huge bellow of rage. And
do you think he's more mad? I feel like he's always at a 10.
I think he does go to 11. And then he decides that, well, I guess since I'm here, I'll destroy this place too. And then he goes and crushes the Dreadfort.
Okay, do we want to? Okay, so that's the end. We have a little epilogue that I definitely want to talk about.
We have a few of them.
That's part of the book.
But let's. Is Kragnos dumb? I think it's time to take the.
Oh yeah, we can do it now. Yeah, absolutely, he's dumb.
He's dumb as hell. Yeah. I wish he had less characterization. I wish he was more force of nature. But like they do, like give him thoughts and feelings, and then he's just like, what?
It makes it worse. Like the more personhood you give him.
Yeah, because he behaves like something without free will almost. In that, like you just like divert the river, and in a way that's like what? I don't know. Maybe if him jumping through that portal was like, oh, okay.
I mean, they make it sound like he is just entirely like his whole being is directed by his rages, and whatever he is currently mad at, that's the thing that he's going to go smash.
But he was currently mad at Marathi, Kane, and Lord Croak. And then he sees like a portal, and he's like, like what would I rather smash? And he's like, oh, like I'm about to smash you, which I imagine is the best part, is like actually the smashing. And he's like, no. I'll delay gratification on this smash and like reprioritize my smashing here.
Because
I'll be right back. There's this. I can see this is a portal, and I can see there's dragons in here. That's all on the up and up. Of course. Why would I doubt that?
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that makes all perfect sense. Yeah, I think this is my first time in the mortal realms, but I'll be right back.
You guys stay right here. Don't
He's
you
like,
move.
oh, and then he gets through and he's like, oh man,
The
I got tricked again by the same frog.
The smashing's always greener on the other side.
Yeah.
I've always said. Let's stop talking about Kragnos real quick. Let's do the epilogues, and then people have asked questions about this stuff.
Sure.
So I want to do the listener questions.
Rein it back in.
Yeah, let's rein it back in. So there are 4 epilogues, basically about each of the Broken Realms book. About the I keep saying the word titular, which is ridiculous, and I can't stop. Well, let's do them in order then. So the first one's about Bellicor, and so the scene that is set is actually is of the twins kicking it in the realm of Slaanesh, in one of the rings of his pleasure realm or whatever it's called.
Yep.
Where they're loving it. They haven't been here before, right? They got rocketed out of Slaanesh's belly, and they were hanging out in Olgu for a hot second, and so they've never stepped foot in such an excessive pleasurable location, and so they're really digging it. Furthermore, the throne's empty. Slaanesh ain't here, and so they're kind of looking side-eyed at well, what does that mean? Who's in charge? Maybe it's us. But the fun is broken when Bellicor arrives in a very taunting and very aggressive, antagonistic tone. Man, why do you step into? You've never even met these dudes before. What's your deal? But he essentially is taunting them, claiming look how easily defeated you were, and they throw it right back at him. Look how easily defeated you were. Both of us, all of us, were defeated by mortals. How ridiculous is that? And they each let slip a little bit of information that I think points to future information. In that the twins were proud of the fact that they were able to drive a wedge between the elves and the humans of Excelsis. I want to talk about that in a second. And Bellicor is gloating about how his shadow, that is the sky cover that he's using to prevent the Stormcast from reforging, is growing. The shadow is going to expand, and furthermore, he points out the fact that the only reason he lost is because a dwarven god showed up, which we are now going to assume is Grungni, because he's presumably the only dwarven god that's worth mentioning at this point. So that's kind of cool. You guys want to talk about that? What are your thoughts?
I appreciate that the Dexessa and the Sinessa are kind of characterized as children a little bit.
Yeah.
And that makes sense for how kind of shitty their plan was and the results. They're newborn, they don't really have the guile to pull off a big heist yet. And they kind of just tried to corrupt a small city and sit on the throne, but they didn't really have a full plan after that. In what world was that going to work? They didn't have the forces or the right amount of corruption to really make something happen. And I think Bellicor knows that, and I hope we see a cool kind of mentorship between those demons. I think that I think we're going to see more of a slow progression of these characters over time. And this is just kind of their first foray while they learn. And it's interesting to think of a demon learning and growing, but I hope that's where this gets taken.
That would be cool. We were kind of goofing on how easily they were taken out before, but I guess I hadn't considered the fact that they're children, and that actually,
they're babies.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
Babies first city crush.
Yeah, I remember my first one,
like it was yesterday. I do agree. They were defeated very easily, and so it does make it feel very anticlimactic. I even said literally, I think, and it was very anticlimactic. But I do also think that there's a more subtle thing that they are sort of alluding to here, and it's that Slaanesh has been able to corrupt devotion to Sigmar. And turn it from a good thing where it's being a devoted of Sigmar and being all for following Sigmar's will is always a good thing, and saying hey, even devotion to Sigmar can be taken too far and can be in service to Slaanesh. And I think that actually sets up fairly well now that we know a little more about what's coming in 3.0 with the Crusades and the Dawnbringers. And it's like, could this then be another thread to say that like Slaanesh is going to be able to turn their zealotry like against them? And I would like to see more of that, because that'd be very interesting, because Sigmar and like the people who follow him, it's always like, yes, everything you do in the service of Sigmar is always a good thing because it's for Sigmar, but maybe not. And I think, Aaron, you wanted to say something about the elves and the wedge driven between them.
How did you know? I can't remember if I said it before. I like that we all took different things away from this, and that it seemed too specific a point for it to not be important maybe later, is the fact that they were proud of the wedge that they were able to bring between the elves and the humans. Like it makes for a fine story or a plot device for this particular story. But the way they brought attention to it makes me think that maybe that is a sign of where the story might go in the future. With what we know about 3.0, I think the word on the street is that grand alliances are kind of going away as a concept, which always seemed a little restrictive to me in the first place. And so if we can see sort of a cordoning off of some of the races in Order, I mean, not that I want to see it, but at least it could make for some interesting stories going forward. And like the way that like the Deepkin were joining up with Marathi, even though they didn't super like it, and like how there she's bringing sort of all the classic dark elf factions like sort of under her sway. Like maybe there'll be groupings of elves, and we'll see them sort of align in similar arrangements as we used to in sort of that old Warhammer fantasy. I don't know if it ends up good or bad, but I'd be interested to see how that plays out. Yeah. And I think that there are opportunities for interesting stories to be told sort of in that space.
Feels like it also furthers the conflict with the Harkuron / Anvil Guard stuff that's going on as well. So it's like, hey, it's not just that city anymore. Now we also have people in Excelsis that are mad at elves. So maybe that'll become like a fissure point in Order, but
and maybe the fact that like that Marathi was sort of part of this this Order Grand Alliance I don't think it ever sat well with anybody, and you can explain it away. Like Order doesn't mean that they're all friends, and Order means that they're just not chaos or destruction. I mean, the fact that they strive towards Order, whatever that Order might be, maybe this is a nod towards really highlighting the fact that like they aren't friends. Like this, let's drive this wedge wider to really draw that distinction for people. And that doesn't even say anything about Grungni, which is also interesting in this little story. The fact that like it's very clearly identified that it was a god who was interfering with Be'lakor's plans.
Yeah. Answer that question once and for all.
Yeah.
I hope. I don't know if people are going to accept that it's actually answered once and for all, but I think it is.
Yeah. And
I confirm it. Yeah, we've had the same dwarf from Broken Realms Be'lakor, from the dwarf in the White Dwarf articles.
I didn't read any of those. I need to get back to them.
They're good. They're good. I really like them. I think they're written by David
Geimer.
David Geimer.
Yeah. Friend of the show, David Geimer. My guess was White Dwarf, but I'm happy to be wrong. Before we read this, my guess was White Dwarf. All right. Next one is the Teclis story. Anybody want to talk about this one?
So this one's more of an interlude. So Teclis is hanging out, astral projecting his body kind of into space, and he talks about his want to kind of run away and to like be by himself, kind of Teclis alone time. And even to like put himself at the bottom of the sea and become completely numb, kind of like the Ideneth. So it's interesting to see Teclis exhibiting characteristics of his rejected children. But he goes up to the north. He starts to talk with the moon spirit, his buddy, and they kind of talk about how the world is changing, whether Teclis did the right thing, smashing Nagash to kind of force the cycle to turn, because that's kind of that kicks off Alarielle's spirit song and the events of this book. And so whether this is right or wrong, and Teclis is kind of like, hey, I think destruction on the rise is better than Nagash. Nagash on the rise, like that was a greater enemy, and that war is almost done. Like it's easy to redirect the orcs as and other forces of orcs as shown by the events of this book. They're pretty. Once he says like that war is all but over, Nagash shows up and is like, the war is not over. I'm still here. I'm still Nagash talking in all caps. And it's like, Tekla's like, didn't I just beat your butt? And he's like, oh yeah, well, only one time. But everything dies, and you will die, Tekla, and I will kill you and all of your family. And Tekla's like, I don't need to like outrun you. I can just like slap you back again. And he was like, you will die by my hand, you son of a bee. And then Tekla is like, you have no power over me. But then the text says like, oh, his voice betrays him a bit. And Nagash is like, that's not true. And like Nagash kind of cackles away. And it's another reference to Tekla being cursed by Nagash by defeating him. So we don't know how that's going to play out, but it is ominous. And it is nice to see Tekla like show some like guilt or fear about like how has Nagash marked him, because he seems to have done it.
One additional sentence I'll throw in there after he says, that's not true. He says, my vengeance has already begun. So is that the mark, or is there something else, like, or what has begun? Like, what is it has to be something. Well, I guess it doesn't. Nagash could just be.
I mean, well, it might be something, but Nagash is always like running his mouth, Yeah.
Nagash's plans take a while. So, it's probably like, yeah, I started my next plan. And then, 2,000 years later, finally, that comes to fruition. But, he's got nothing but time.
Yeah. I think they'll pull on this Nagash v. Tekla's thread.
I think they will too.
I don't know how, and I think it's a cool matchup for sure. Like it's the nerds.
I'm going to be honest. Reading the story, I didn't know what they were talking about when he was talking to the moon, and the whole "you have exchanged one bane for another. Is it wisdom to wake the giant?" I literally just read the Kragnos book, and I didn't know that the giant was Kragnos until you explained what was going on. Because I didn't draw the connection between what Tekla did and Kragnos. But if you draw the line, so Tekla beat Nagash, which let Ilariel do her thing, which then freed Kragnos. So yes, okay, it was his fault that this happened.
Maybe as a special episode one time, I really want to do, and I'm sure this already exists somewhere, but like War Age of Sigmar like power rankings, like the different power. You know how they do that for comic books and stuff, like different power levels. Because there does seems to be like a very reasonable hierarchy where like really tough heroes always get beaten up by like demigod level heroes, and then the gods are definitely a step up above them, and kind of like like Kragnos beats up Gordrak. And so all of like the realm gods, and then like maybe above them are the chaos gods. I don't know, but I would like to break it down. Like Be'lakor is not as tough as Grungni, even though you might think you don't go by the model. You go by like, are you a god? Like in the flowchart? No, like okay, well.
And then you can also like fish out all the examples of when someone beat someone, so you can use those as baselines to be like, well, I know so and so is better than this guy because he beat him.
We should have a spreadsheet with some kind of numeric like formula that calculates there.
Would be ideal.
Well, we have to have another holiday episode sometime. So,
what if there are no more holidays? Yeah, we did.
Okay. All right, fine.
You're not in charge of me, Phil. Did you have any Tekla thoughts, Phil, besides it being your least favorite?
I mean, I don't know. I guess the only thing that I will say, it has nothing to do with the story, but just that I like that the characterizations of Nagash and his all caps is two very different things when Paven described what he was hearing and when I read it. Because when I was thinking about it, my thought was like, so Nagash is sort of like he's absorbed all this power that when he speaks, it's like the embodiment of death is talking. And so it's like, we're going to write this in all caps because it's just so like forceful. And then for Paven, it's just like he's just this angry nerd and he's just like screaming at everybody. And I kind of like that. I like that a little bit more than the way that I heard him in my head, but
yeah. You didn't beat me, I beat you.
No one beats death. Yeah. I'll get you next time.
He talks that way to the Mortarks too, which is great. Like trying to do stuff, and Nagash is like, "Douglas!"
Next one, Kragnos' little story. Who wants to talk about this one?
Not even about Kragnos. Well, I mean, it's about him, but it has nothing to do with him actually. I guess I started, so I can give the quick synopsis here. But basically, we drop in with this. I guess we're not really told what Bograts is, but we can sort of infer that he must be some sort of orc. And he's a lookout out in the swamp, and he's got a what does he call it? It's a spyglass, but he calls it something, and I thought it was funny.
His seeing stick.
Yeah, his seeing stick. And so he's just hanging out, and he's peering off in the horizon, and so he sees the Dreadspine Fortress, and he sees this gigantic guy just wrecking everything, and huge dust cloud. And so he comes down from the tree, and this other orc asks him, like, what's so funny? And he like points to this cave painting or a tree carving maybe of a giant centaur, and he's like, it's him.
It's the beast.
Yeah, it's the beast. And so we now know, because hindsight being 2020, we now know that these are the Cruel Boys, and they're like, hey, it's this guy that we worship. Let's go check that out. But that, I mean, it's somewhat inconsequential, but it's a nice little tie-in to introduce us to the Cruel Boys without actually having been told that it was the Cruel Boys.
Yeah, it's a little sad that how quickly after this book we got like the 3.0 reveal, and I think like we I don't know if we knew Cruel Boys, but we knew Swamp Orcs, and we maybe had seen a model like when I was reading this book. So like I can imagine a world where we're just tantalized by this paragraph here, like trying to figure out like what the heck these are. But like it was such a quick turnaround, we didn't get that period of speculation.
Just think how juicy this would have been had you not known. Like that would have been.
Yeah,
we would have another hour of podcast right now.
What could it be? It's the beast. Right on. I still think it was well done. Like it was a good.
Yeah, it was good
to do so. Yeah,
it was well written too. I mean, it's a minor little story, but it was good.
Yeah.
It also tells you like what Kragnos is doing, which is like being tricked and being mad and smashing a Dreadfort.
He smashes everything.
This is very much like a Marvel movie post-credit or like mid-credit scene, right? Like where it cuts the credits roll and then it cuts and then you see this little scene. And then Samuel L. Jackson comes in and says, I'm putting together a team. And then the last one is about Morathi, who is now, I guess, quote unquote, standing trial for her actions in Harkuron. So she rolls up to the Grand Conclave of Excelsis. Like most of the seats are empty currently, but there's a couple of folks here who are basically standing, as judges to her trial. Most notably is probably the Celestin Prime, who's got Gal Maraz. Sigmar isn't here, notably, but the Prime is standing in for him. There's a back and forth where she is not defending herself because she's a goddess now, so she has no need to defend herself to the likes of this Celestin Prime. But it sounds like they're still going to try and pass judgment on her. But before they do, in the classic objection, in steps a dwarf or Duarden, who interjects and says, no, the verdict ought to be clemency. One of the other Duardens there exhales. He says, it's the Great Maker, because of course this interrupter is Grogny. And he says, none other, said the Dwarven god. Right, enough bickering, you lot. We've got work to do. What a great closing scene. I don't even like Duarden all that much, but like it's kind of cool to have a god roll up and who's been absent for, I mean, not as absent as Grimnir is, but like still relatively absent to the scene.
I mean, Grimnir's got a bit of an excuse though, being dead.
Yeah, I don't know. It feels the problem is like you're not rooting for both sides. Oh, at least I'm not rooting for both. Like Morathi's guilty as hell. Like she's Soul City. Like you were hoping she would get some justice here, and Grungy's like, yeah, like we're putting together a team. Yeah, I was like,
Grungy is Sam Jackson.
Yeah,
Are you on a first name basis with Samuel L. Jackson?
But yeah, I think it's cool. I'm glad we have confirmation it's Grungy. Yeah, I hope something. Yeah, what do you think? What do you guys think is going to happen with the door? Is I guess I want to hear wild speculation soon. But anything else about this story?
I'll say that I agree with you that Morathi needs to have some sort of ramifications, and so for Grungy to come in and save her or advocate for clemency, he better have a good reason, and they better tell me what that reason is. I hope to God this isn't the last we hear of this particular interaction. And I hope it's not just, oh, we need all the help we can get. No, it's not enough. You gotta give me like a justified lore reason.
Yeah. I want actions to have consequences.
Yeah.
And this is like a dodge of a consequence. And I'm like, no, like I want it to matter. Like I want things that happen to matter. Like, and
if I had to guess, Sigmar. So I guess it's important to know that Sigmar's not there, which we already did. But so he's obviously busy. Grugny has been this whole time in Azir, in Azurheim, helping Sigmar. So he probably was sent as well by Sigmar. So my guess is that Sigmar has some plan where he's like, no, as much as I'm mad at Morathi, I'm not mad enough that I'm going to punish her right now, as I need her for something. And so the punishment is probably coming, but not yet.
Yeah, that's the way I read it too, is that Sigmar's strategically pardoning her, not overtly, but because hey, it's still an order city, and I have other cities, and I just I can't offend an ally, because everybody else is so much worse, and that's why he but he doesn't want to send a signal that he's pardoning her. That's why he sent the Celestin Prime, and then probably sent Grungy also to to dissolve the trial. But sorry, Aaron, I cut you off.
No, I don't think you did. My only thought is you mentioned, all right, he needs her for something. I hope he does need her for a specific thing, not enough to say, all right, well, I just need all the help I can get. For it to be worthwhile to me, I need to know that Sigmar has a specific purpose for why he needs to keep her around.
I almost wonder, because we're basically out of factions at this point that need to be introduced into Age of Sigmar, and I have to think that Morathi is going to be needed to try and pull the forces of Ulgu into the greater conflict, because we need Malarian, and obviously there's a direct tie between Morathi and Malarian. So my hope and my guess is that is what he needs her for, is he needs that connection to Ulgu to be able to be so we need Malarian to have some skin in the game again, because if he's just going to hang out in the shadow world, we can't have a god on the sidelines anymore. That's my guess.
Yeah. I wish we got more Sigmar plan. Maybe we'll get this in the new edition with Stormcast, but I want to hear more about what is Sigmar is because Sigmar was originally trying to repair the Pantheon at the opening of the gates. I wonder on where he feels that project has gotten him, because it certainly didn't work with Nagash, but Alariel and is they're good friends now. She made she made some cities, and they're you can take them as allies. And Teclis, I think Teclis, there's strong ties there.
Well, but think about what happened after Forbidden Power, though, right? With the Storm Bolts, they're actually they had a combo, and they didn't end things well.
No. Yeah.
I don't know, Settler's Gain is kind of a Sigmar Teclis.
Yeah, but he doesn't. I don't think Teclis blames he doesn't look unfavorably on Settler's Gain because of what Sigmar did. I think he just looks unfavorably on Sigmar specifically. He's not holding the mortals responsible for the thing that the god did.
Yeah,
I don't think
I guess everybody. Yeah, you're right. Everybody's still doing their own thing. Like nobody is coordinating with each other. Like Teclis is playing his own game. The Everqueen's playing her own game. Wrathy's certainly playing her own game. I think like Grungy and Sigmar are the only people that like seem to like coordinate.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
That, and I think that the only reason that Grungy is working with him is because Grungy's people kind of said, we don't want you anymore. And so Sigmar was like, I need you, Grungy.
The other way. I mean, it's not exactly the other way around, but he almost said that to them. I mean, not that he didn't.
Well, I mean, it feels like it's mutual, right? Like they felt like he abandoned them. And then he's like, but I'm your god. Like, you're supposed to believe in me regardless. And
yeah, it depends how much we consider the dispossessed, like what kind of people those are. Because like, I think
dwarves
worship.
That's
I mean, like the first Sigmar factions, like the Fire Slayers are all a Grimnir like fanatics. So those have always been all Grimnir all the time.
Yep.
The Karajan Overlords reject all gods, including especially Grungy. So that's true. But I think the dispossessed are still like run in the mill Duarden who, they still worship Grungy, and he's like you see him around town. you have the 6 smiths or 9 smiths.
6 smiths.
And those are like demigod dwarf smiths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and and those guys are. You could you can also hang out with them.
Yes.
I don't know. It is a little like gray and like it's not clearly spelled out, and I think some of it was they haven't told us exactly how those things fit together, and I'm very interested in seeing what happens.
Hopefully we hear more in 3.0.
Yeah, well, actually, I'll tell you what. We'll use that as a good segue into one of the questions. So, Sever, our friend Will here in town, asked a question. He wants to know, which of the epilogue story teases are you most looking forward to GW expanding upon? So, I think we've all talked about different things that we'd like to see coming forward. Which of these stories are you most jazzed to see fleshed out?
Well, I have to. I mean, I think it has, at least for me, it has to be the one with Morathi. I mean, I want to know what happens to Morathi, and I want to know what happens to the dwarves, and like what's up with the Celestant Prime being sent instead of Sigmar, since he was going to be judging a god. Like, wouldn't it have made sense that Sigmar would be there himself?
Is he Sigmar?
It's Sigmar all along. Yeah, I agree with Phil. I think my most favorite, like I'm very interested in the Cities of Sigmar like faction, because it's like the least defined, and it's so like inherently complex because of the model ranges it has to combine. I want them to explore how like all of those things fit together. Like, how do the cities work together? What is the relationship to Morathi, the Stormcast, Grungy, the dwarves, the elves? Like, what does that society look like and function, and how does that move forward? And I think we're going to get a whole bunch of it in 3.3.0, like with the Dawnbringer Crusades. That's where I'm most excited for.
Guys, man, I'm going to give you a lame answer, and that the Morathi one is I think chock full of the most interesting threads, and so it's definitely the most interesting one. When first reading it, didn't even note the fact that the Celestin Prime took Sigmar's place. I just thought maybe just story-wise, the writers are just trying to not have Sigmar be so present all the time, and like the Celestin Prime is the voice of Sigmar. He's going to take the stand in for him all the time, and I didn't think that anything was up there, but I think you guys have maybe hinted that it's maybe interesting that the fact that he's doing that. And then also we were asked by Darth Alec, he asked the question, what is this about the Prime acting as Sigmar's stand-in? And so I've started to think about it, and you know what? Maybe there is a story there. Like we haven't seen Sigmar hit the realms in a while, and the Prime has sort of taken his place. We know the Prime got reforged a while back in Forbidden Power. He got dusted by Olinder. So like, you know what, maybe there are stories to be told or information to be discovered about the Celestin Prime, and I'm interested to see where that goes, in addition to the whole Marathi thing and the Dwarven thing. And yeah, all of these are all very interesting, and they packed it into this small story. To answer Darth Alice's question, what is this about the Prime acting as Sigmar stand-in? Is there anything else to add there? Have we covered that?
I don't think so.
About that a lot. Yeah.
I mean, it's just the one sentence. There's not a whole lot else to expound upon.
Gotcha.
What if I'll actually thought, what if Sigmar's missing? When's the last time anybody saw Sigmar?
When he talked to Teclis at the end of Forbidden Power, I think they had a little combo. Like,
does Gardas ever talk to him in Bellicor or no?
No.
I don't think we'll talk to a Stormcast every once in a while.
I don't think he leaves Azir anymore, and I don't know why that is, but
he can do like God stuff where he like
he can talk to people out of the realm, but like physically, he has not left Azir or Azerheim, as far as I remember. He hasn't left since he closed the gates. Which maybe is just because he's so embarrassed about throwing Gelmaraz. He's just like, man, I can't face anybody anymore.
Yeah, and it's not like he's never been there, because obviously he spent a lot of time, like historically. It's just recently. Yeah, that's interesting.
Everybody remembers him having that big old goof, and he's just like, nah, it's too embarrassing.
Yeah, it is interesting how they write Sigmar as like kind of a little bit unknowable, but then we're like always interacting with other gods like on his tier. Where they're just like, we just like have their point of view characters.
Yeah.
Where they're like,
are they on his level though? I mean, I think
he's like Zeus to their Ares, you know, they're like, the same tier.
But we'll leave the tier list to our special Patreon only tier list episode. And instead, I'll ask you guys, do you have any other points of interest you want to talk about before I ask more listener questions? We got a bunch.
Let's just get into these questions. We've been going for a while now.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. So we've had a couple questions about Kragnos, the character, sort of looking forward. Kugelfang52 asks, in fact, I'm going to ask all these questions and we'll lump them together. Kugelfang52 asks, what do you see as Kragnos' new role going forward? How will he interact with others? Magnus, who's a patron of the show, thank you very much, asks, do you think Kragnos brings enough power and authority as destruction deity to become the de facto sovereign of Gur for the foreseeable future? And he also asked, what ways do each of you think Kragnos could influence the realms in a way that is narratively interesting? So, a bunch of ways to phrase what's Kragnos going to be doing in the future. What's his role? What's his place? Where do you think he's going, or where do you hope he's going?
Yeah, I like the idea of introducing Kragnos. I think he's more interesting than like creating a Gorka Morka model. Although maybe that would have been really cool, like it's like double-headed giant orc. I mean, maybe that would, but I like they took it in a new direction, gave us something new and very Age of Sigmar. I kind of wanted them to like. I would like his character to develop somewhat into being more than a living earthquake, because he's not. A living earthquake isn't actually that interesting as a character. And he's actually more interesting as an earthquake than he is as a weird character making dumb choices. So I'm like, he just woke up after being like time locked for a million years, and so he can develop. And I wonder if he like maybe learned something in Excelsis. Like, don't get tricked.
Stay away from portals.
Like, don't get tricked again. Nobody tricks Kragnos 3 times.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, won't get fooled again.
You don't fool me twice. So I would like, I think Kragnos is really cool, and he's like really powerful, obviously, and that's cool. And he's a destruction character that like that unites the different destruction factions, which I think is, again, I like it. But I wish he would develop as a character.
Right. Phil, what do you think?
Yeah, I generally agree with that. I understand all the like, man, he's such a dumb character, and like literally, like he's not making intelligent choices. He's not thinking anything through. And I feel like it fits how they wrote his backstory, like his whole thing. Like I feel like he's consistent, at least. Like even if people don't like it, at least he's consistent. I do think
it's what Pete Kragnos looks like.
Yeah, pretty much. And so I do think that it maybe means that people might be disappointed with this character. He's like the embodiment of the destruction faction, where like greenskins just want to beat stuff up. and ogres just want to eat stuff. And like, it's not complicated. Like, we know what destruction is all about, and it can be summed up in just a couple sentences. And that's Kragnos' character, but all in one person.
Yeah, I would like Kragnos. I think I'm on record. I want Kragnos to get a little bit more clever, or I want him to get dumber.
Yeah,
or a lot.
Like get us into like giant troll territory, and then I'm like, oh, what a lovable oaf. But right now he's in such a weird, like, just spiteful fool place that
Yeah, like make him like out of control Incredible Hulk, where like that there is a mind in there, but when the rage takes over, just get out of the way. Like, there's nothing you can do. There's no reasoning with him. There's no like logic anymore. It's just he is destruction incarnate, and if you're not gonna get out of the way, you're gonna get stomped. And that's probably.
If he was just in a blind rage and jumped through the portal, that would have been better. But he like stopped. It took a second.
I know. Thought about it.
Is this a trick? We're like, no, it's not a trick. We don't know where that portal came from either.
Yeah.
And in fact, they said, don't go through that portal. Don't you do it.
You won't do it. You won't do it. I
dare you. I triple dog dare you.
I heard you were afraid of dragons. I'm sorry. I like Kragnos.
I think he's great the way he is. But like, yeah, sure.
We just want him to be different.
I don't even want him to be different. But like, if they were going to like want to expand on him more, yeah, I would agree. If you want to make him like into more of a character, you need to do something with him. But I think he's probably just going to be like this terror in the realm of Gur that has to be dealt with, and that's going to be the whole thing with like Indrasta. And there's probably going to be a whole story around her hunting him all across Gur, because I don't know if any of you guys have looked at the stuff that came in the Dominion box about her yet, but it basically says that like her goal in life, or her whatever you consider a Stormcast's life, considering they are reforged over and over forever, is that she wants to be the one to kill Kragnos.
I got bad news for you. You're not on the same level on our Age of Sigmar character power ranking.
Yeah, she is shockingly powerful though for what she is on the tabletop. But I digress. So yeah, I don't know. Like, he's what he is. Aaron, do you have any other thoughts?
I do. Unfortunately, I do. Two things I wanted to get out. So let's see. One, we're talking about predictions of how they're going to use them. You guys are talking about how they potentially either you like him the way he is, or you want to see some character development. We're not going to get character development out of GW on this guy. He's going to be a plot device whenever they need a big brute to break something, and that'll be the end of it. Like, track record has shown that they have no intention of developing this guy in any particular direction. And which I think is a bummer, because if he's just going to be the guy who wants to fight, to prove that he's the strongest, we already had an army of that. Like, we have a whole grand alliance of that. We didn't need this dude to do that. We had plenty of options for that already. And now maybe you needed to be a god character, I guess. But like, I think later on, maybe we'll talk about this, but what doesn't a super powerful orc accomplish that this guy does? He was a cool model. Very cool model. I love the model. The model's great. Very interesting. They made him and they said, crap, what do we do with him? And so they made up this story for him that like supersedes the stuff that they already had available to him. It seems like they left a lot missed opportunities with the available tools they had at their disposal.
I think I might have said this before, but your comments remind me of it. All would be forgiven if Kragnos is used as character development for Gordrak.
Yeah.
Maybe Gordrak learns, like, you can't just smash. Like, sometimes you need to bash.
Yeah.
There's
the lesson.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, the bash shard. And then like he learns to be cunning. And I think that would be, and like juxtaposing those two characters in a way where they don't fit the same spot. I think, I'm a big Gordrak. Like, Gordrak's real cool, so I like him a lot.
But they're not going to do. They don't have the nuance available to them to.
Why? Maybe not. But
I agree with you. That would be awesome. But like it's you took a motif that we already had and you slapped a different body on it. Which
they're like,
seem necessary.
These 2 years of buildup for Gordrak. well, here's Kragnos. Have fun. It's like,
Yeah,
wait a minute.
Yeah, I hope it's not just like, oh, we this is Gordrak 2, more handsome. But like, well, we'll see.
Sure.
I have my hopes that we have our reality.
My cynical view is that they wanted to have a model that they could use as a god level figure for all destruction rather than trying to introduce god level figures for each of the individual factions in destruction. And so they're like, we need to come up with something that's completely outside all the ranges. Here's a centaur god.
I think that level of analysis is correct. I think it's less fun narratively.
Oh, of course it's less fun narrative. That's why I said that's my cynical view. Like, take it completely out of the lore and fun and say it was a business.
Age of Sigmar is a documentary and the events happened in real time.
My only thought, if they were going to do that, why wouldn't they pick something that had themes from like their destruction army? Why would they pick something so different? I mean, Nagash is a skeleton dude. He's like his people, like he's like his dudes, like his army. He's like a ghost skeleton hybrid guy. Anyways,
get Phil Kelly in here and you ask him those questions.
I'm afraid of Phil Kelly.
The hard-hitting journalism that everyone wants.
Another question that's kind of related from Lichcast, who's also a patron of the show. And he asked, does Broken Realms Kragnos outline or hint at any deeper reason for the narrative focus on Gur for the new edition? I think they just needed to pick a realm, and this is the one they picked. What do you guys think?
I think they wanted to focus on destruction, and they're like, what is a better realm to focus on destruction than Gur? And then they made it all work.
Yeah, I mean, there's the logical thread of the life ritual that the Everqueen enacts, affecting Gur most savagely. Yeah, I don't think Age of Sigmar 3.0 is only going to take place in Gur. I think the opening, where the first act is going to take place in Gur with the 3.0 box and release. I think we'll see it go to other realms as well. They have this whole playground plan. I don't think they, even in Age of Sigmar 1, they played in 3 realms mainly. It wasn't just Akshi, it was Shaman and Gairan as well, and Gur a bit.
Would you claim that Age of Sigmar 2 was only Shyish, or do you consider that multi-realms as well? Yeah.
No. I mean, I think I wouldn't say it.
Sure. I hope it's similar to the way they did too. Like Shyish focus initially, but obviously the realms are interconnected, and I don't have another word for interconnected. So let's do another set of questions. So folks really wanted to talk about Beasts of Chaos, and by that I mean 2 people wanted to talk about Beasts of Chaos, but Grey Heresy wants to know, why isn't Kragnos part of Beasts of Chaos? And then Kugelfang 52 again asked, there's a lot of overlap between destruction and certain aspects and factions of chaos, like the Untamed Beasts and Beasts of Chaos. How does this book delineate the difference, and do you buy it?
Well, I feel like, yes, the themes, like the aesthetic themes, definitely are there because he's a centaur, and like all of the old mythical beasts from like Greek mythology basically ended up in Beasts of Chaos. So in some ways it's almost an unfortunate choice for them to go centaur, because like they made that direct thread aesthetically, and then they're like, but he's destruction, just don't worry about it, Beasts of Chaos players. Now, of course, I do wonder if maybe the Beasts of Chaos at one point were just like, for lack of a better term, monsters in like a realm like Gur, and then were corrupted by chaos. And so I guess this is something we were talking about before we started recording, but so Kragnos's father is Gorgos, and Gorgos sounds a little bit like Gorgon, and the Gorgons are the big like cow monsters in Beasts of Chaos. So maybe like there is some thread that you could draw there, and then like somewhere between pre-Age of Myth and the modern period, they like these monsters that are descendants of the Drogruk or whoever ended up being chaos spawn and corrupted. As to like the human factions from Gur that are also part of Chaos, like that's fairly easy to explain because there's human factions in every realm that are turned to Chaos because humans are easily swayed to Chaos.
I want to slip in a hashtag Phil theories in there real quick for.
I thought we were getting a really Pepe Sylvia moment there. I don't know. Like I feel like Beast of Chaos, like you don't have like you don't have like a monopoly on four-legged torsoed creatures. Like we have the Kronothi have a centaur. The old Chaos dwarves have centaur guys.
Vangorian lords have those.
The Vangorian lords are now sent. Like it's just like a fantasy shape. And I think the difference for me, like the way the Age of Sigmar factions break upon the Grand Alliance is mostly theological. It's like who do you worship? And if you worship like gods from a hell dimension, then it's chaos. Then you're chaos, regardless of what race you are or what you look like goat man, snake woman, just regular person. If you worship the dark powers from the realm of chaos, that you become Grand Alliance chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And if you worship like something weird, but also like everybody likes to beat stuff up. Like that is not a distinguishing characteristic, really. But if you like worship, like, you know, if you're some sort of primordial deity that is still within the mortal realms, then you could be destruction. Like if you worship like some weird moon or Gorka Morka or something Gorka Morka sat on once.
Yeah, something he bit and spit back out.
Yeah, and then you can go down the list with Nagash being like, if you worship like a Nagash, then it's Nagash, and if it's, you know, some reasonable god from the pantheon of Order, then your Order.
If you worship some other death god, Nagash will find him, eat him, and then you'll worship Nagash.
I think I kind of like that the Grand Alliance is going away. If that ends up being true, I guess I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but I think that might be the case. And I think that we've reached the point where there are now so many factions that there's gonna be so many incredibly like a million instances of overlapped themes that there will never be an example of a purely unique faction. There's going to be crossover all left and right, and that's just the nature of the beasts of chaos.
Yes.
Name of the game at this point. How about let's talk about some of the characters again in this book. Sever will ask which character in Kragnos got underserved the most, and I feel like that's related to Darth Alex's question. What was the point of Kragnos' character in the narrative of the book? Wait, no, we already kind of talked about this in the narrative of the book. Would anything really change if it was just Gordrak? Touched on this. Do you have any parting thoughts on how much better Gordrak is than Kragnos? I think we all agree Gordrak is better than Kragnos. Or do you think there's any other underserved characters? Maybe let's start there.
I feel like Gordrak's too, like this is damning, but Gordrak's too smart for the portal trick.
Yeah, absolutely is.
I think Gordrak's more committed to the fight. Like it's not even necessarily that he's smarter. He's just like, no, I'm smashing and bashing. I'm not going over in some portal. I'm gonna keep hitting you. Like either I need to be knocked down to the point where I'm not getting back up, or you need to be knocked down to the point where you're not getting back up. Like nobody's just going to walk out of here without finishing this fight.
Unless, of course, he's fighting Kragnos.
I forgot. Do you remember Gordrak's character or plot line where he wanted to fight Sigmar?
Yeah.
He's like, I want to fight the Hammer God. Like he's the only guy that will make that's worth fighting anymore. So I don't know. I don't know if it would have quite. I don't know if it's quite. We could switch them right around and it being the exact same story. Yeah, I think I've belabored this comparison to death.
Sure. Do you guys think that there are any other underserved characters? I would have also said the twins, but I think you've now convinced me why they are the way they are.
Yeah, I would like Alariel to get.
Yeah,
I don't know, more. I don't know, like more, like she's like playing around the periphery, but like, you know, I would like, I don't know, some more thought.
It was a surprisingly quick blurb for what, like, considering the large ramifications of the thing that she did. Like if there's going to be this new life resurgence, it was kind of a small window into like how that happened.
It would be like if the Necroquake got 2 pages.
Yeah.
We'd be like, wait a minute, whoa, what? We need to talk about this.
And maybe it won't be as important, and so maybe I'm overstating it. But if it is important, I would have thought that she would have gotten more attention for it.
I don't know. It feels pretty important. I mean, you're calling back to the old world, and I feel like you don't do that just for giggles.
Yeah, it would be cool to see the Everqueen become a like Nagash style like bad guy, or at least like, hey, I'm doing my own thing, and like, you know, now vines are ripping out of the ground and like, you know, sucking down farmers and stuff. So she like also splits out from the pantheon in a way that like, oh, I'm taking my own territory now. Like Living City, that's mine now. Yeah, and that could have been more interesting than. I don't know. Yeah, I hope they pick up the thread though.
I think they almost have to, right? I mean, like there has to be more to the story with Ilariel. I think I mentioned it before. I do want them to pick up the thread for the Draconith eggs. Like the Seraphon made a deal to say that they're going to take the last eggs of this dragon race and keep them safe, and then like besides that one sentence, there's nothing else mentioned about it. That feels like a big deal. If there could be a new race of dragons inside the temple ships flying around and we don't know about it. But that feels like a very tiny plot point that they are probably not going to touch again, or at least not for a long time.
I'm going to ask one more real question and then one silly question. Another Darth Alec question. He asked, with 3 of the big cities knocked out, what does the future of Cities of Sigmar look like for you? Do you guys have any hot takes?
Well, I think they're good. Those cities all are going to. If they don't have rules, they're going to get more rules. They're not knocked. They purposefully didn't destroy them so they can keep them in the IP. Because they, you know, spent a lot of effort building the cities and like giving them cool backstories. I hope we get more. I really hope we get an Ulfin card in City of Sigmar. Sorry, I've been painting a lot of Cursed City.
I guess you remind us.
Yeah, I think like that's a really. I want cities in all realms. I want like tons and tons.
That would be cool, and there's a lot of great opportunity for expansion, right? Like you can, what I imagine is easy thing to make that like is a lot of like unique flavor if you just keep making new ones.
Yeah. Well, I think from the short story that we had about Morathi and Malarian talking in her wherever it was in Harcuron, I think we're going to definitely get more about what's going on there, because it sounds like the citizens of Harcuron are not happy about their current situation, and there is quite a bit of internal strife in the city. So I imagine we're going to be revisiting that, assuming that they weren't all just put down, which I'm guessing they're not all dead, but maybe they are. I mean, I think it's fairly obvious that Excelsis is probably going to be sort of the starting point of the story for 3.0, because we know that it's starting in Gur and pushing back out. As to what's going to happen in Kaimon, I have no idea. That place is messed up right now.
Don't mess up. We may never know. Can't get in, can't get out. Cool. And then a final question from Space Ninja 422. Would you rather be a Cruel Boy, Ironjaw, or a Bone Splitter orc? Deep question. It says a lot about a person. I'll start because I thought about this. I wrote it down. I wrote the question in here so I had time to think. Assuming you're a capable or good version of each of these orc, I would probably be an Ironjaw. I mean, not with the way I am currently, but like if I were a specimen Ironjaw, I'd feel like I'd rather do that. I feel like the least likely to, I don't know, I guess you'd always have to fight. I don't know. It seems like it's the strongest of the bunch.
Be a lot of smashing and bashing. And yeah, I think I agree. They
top
are
of the food chain, kind of.
Yeah,
where I'd say
they are probably the strongest. I have to imagine Bone Splitters have the most fun.
True.
They're just out there on their crazy wah hunts and stuff, and like with the weird docs telling them what to do, and like chasing the spirits of the world beast. And I don't know, they seem like they would just have a good time. I think regardless, I know I don't necessarily know between those two which one I would choose, but I know I wouldn't want to be a cruel boy because they just don't. I mean,
live in a swamp and they're
seem
smarter, but you got to worry about getting like stabbed with poison all the time.
Yeah, and they seem very evil, whereas the other orcs are just like, we want to wreck stuff.
Paven, what do you think?
I'm with you. Yeah, I think Bone Split is having the most fun.
You guys.
Bone
All right.
just want to have fun.
I was going to sing, but I don't want to owe anybody $1. All right. So questions are over. I didn't say it at the beginning, but hey, dear listener, if you want to get a question on the Mortal Realms show, what you have to do is you have to join our Discord at www.themortalrealms.com/Discord. And you have to hang in there all day, every day, just waiting for me to ask if you have any questions for our episode. That's the only way. There's no other trick. There's no other special secret. It's just complete devotion to our Discord. So let's wrap this up with our final thoughts and review. What did you guys think of this book? First come, first serve. Whoever starts talking first gets it.
I liked it. I liked all of the Broken Realms. I don't think this was my favorite book in the series, but I did really enjoy it. It had fun twists and turns and good fights. Yeah.
Nice. Right on.
I also very much enjoyed this book. I think I probably liked it more than most people just because I didn't have a big problem with Kragnos and the way that he acted, but I was also just happy to read about Croak doing his stuff. I guess in retrospect, though, this probably wasn't my favorite Broken Realms book. I think when I immediately finished it, I was like, this was great. I liked it the best. Thinking about it more, I think actually Be'lakor was probably my favorite. But maybe Morathi. I don't know. It's definitely not Teclis. I think it's probably a tie between Be'lakor and Morathi. They were both very good, I thought.
Right on. What did I think of this book? I definitely think it was probably my least favorite Broken Realms book. I feel like for each of them, I've always had like a couple of problems with them that I was able to look past. And because I always thought that like they were leading to something like bigger than the sum of its parts. But then we got to this book and I probably just liked it more than those other ones. And maybe I was even more let down because I expected so much more out of the culmination of the Broken Realms series. And it's a shame that it was the worst out of them and not the best out of them. A lot of it, I think, stems from like Kragnos, probably. Like the Kragnos parts I didn't find the most interesting. And I like Destruction Armies. I have Ironjaws. Like I can dig them. It just seemed... I don't know, like they didn't know what to do with them. Like they were scrambling and they couldn't come up with a good idea. And so they needed to create a whole book for him to try and make him interesting. And I don't know that they necessarily succeeded, which is a shame because he's a really cool model. And I feel like there is potential for cool stories to be told for him. I just don't know that I've seen one yet. It got me wondering what my favorite Broken Realms book is. I think it was Morathi because it seemed like it has the most potential. Like when you first read Morathi, it seemed so realm shaking. And now after 4 of these Broken Realms book, like the realm shaking, which is fun because he's an earthquake god, it has lost a little bit of its luster. And like you need more than like, I don't know, shock value for me. And I don't know that I got much more out of this book besides the epilogue parts. I feel like the best part of the whole campaign book was the shorts at the end, which I very much enjoyed. So that was pretty neat. And as always, they do a really good job of hooking you and making you wonder what's going to come next. Like they didn't do a bad job on that front, in that I am excited to see for what's on its way, what we can expect to see in 3.0's lore. So as always, I'm looking forward. Never satisfied now. Always want what's next. Any other thoughts, my friends, before we end the show?
No, good night.
It's time for our reforging. But Sigmar willing, we will be back soon. Like, subscribe, share, or leave a review. Join us in Discord. Drop a tip on our Patreon. Anything you can do will spread the word of Sigmar farther than we can on our own. Chat with us anytime about your thoughts on Twitter at The Mortal Realms. And Phil, where can they find you on the internet?
I am in our Discord fairly frequently, so that's probably where you're going to find me.
Nice, and find you they shall. Paven, where can they find you on the internet?
Mortal Realms Discord, sometimes.
And I'm Aaron. You can find me on Twitter at DosAsos and also on the Mortal Realms Discord. You can find all our Mortal Realms shows and content at www.themortalrealms.com. The end. That was good.
Yeah.
Ooh. Everqueen Ariel is a lot of like
Alariel, actually. When we no, but when we did the Techless episode, people were giving us a hard time for calling her Ariel and not Alariel.
that sounds
Oh,
much more
man.
correct. Yeah. Oh man, pronunciation matters. Okay.
Yeah.
I apologize to the listeners. I apologize to my family, everyone on the Zoom call.